Good evening. My name is Carlos Rosario, and I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. Welcome to this Planning Commission meeting. Please remember to turn off your cell phones. The parking validation machine for under City Hall is located at the rear of the chambers. And right now, if you are able, please stand up to salute the flag. All right, we'll start out with the roll call. Chair Rosario, I'm here. Vice Chair Bickford.
Here.
Commissioner Barocio. Commissioner Bondal is not here. Commissioner Cantrell is not here yet. Commissioner Cow.
Here.
Commissioner Casey is not here yet. Commissioner Nguyen.
Here.
Commissioner Oliverio is not here yet. And Commissioner Young.
Here.
That is 7 and, oops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we have quorum. Before we begin, I want to remind the Planning Commissioner members and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at these meetings. This includes commenting on the specific agenda item only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in conversation with the commissioners or staff. All members of the Planning Commission, staff, and public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Repeated failure to comply with this code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, may result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the Planning Commission will now come to order. Summary of the hearing procedures. If you want to address the commission, please fill out a speaker card located near the audiovisual technician and deposit the completed card into one of the plexiglass baskets. There are also speaker cards in the back of the chambers and at the side entrance. The procedure for this hearing is as follows. After staff's presentation, applicants or appellants may make up to a 5-minute presentation. During the public comment period, the chair will call out names on submitted speaker cards in the order received for those members of the public who attend in person. As your name is called, line up in front of the microphone at the front of the chamber or on the stairs. Generally, each speaker will be given up to 2 minutes for public testimony, and speakers using a translator will have up to 4 minutes. At the discretion of the chair, the time allotted for each speaker will be changed depending on the number of items on the agenda, the number of speakers, and other factors. Speakers using a translator will have double the time allotted. After the public testimony, the applicant or appellant may make closing remarks for up to an additional 5 minutes. Planning commissioners may ask questions of the speakers. Response to commissioner questions will not reduce the speaker's time allotments. The public hearing will then be closed and the Planning Commission will take action on the item. The Planning Commission may request staff to respond to the public testimony, ask staff questions, and discuss them. If you challenge these land use decisions in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at this public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Planning Commission's actions on rezonings, pre-zonings, general plan amendments, and code amendments is only advisory to the City Council. The City Council will hold public hearings on these. Section 20-120-400 of the Municipal Code provides the procedures for legal protests to the City Council on rezonings and pre-zonings. The Planning Commission's action on conditional use permits is appealable to the City Council in accordance with Section 20-100-220 of the Municipal Code. Agendas and all staff reports for this meeting may be accessed on the city's website. Public comment. So public comments to the Planning Commission on non-agendized items. Please fill out a speaker's card and give it to the technician. Each member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes. The commission cannot take any formal action without the item being properly noticed and placed on the agenda. In response to public comment, the commission is limited to the following options: responding to statements made or questions posed by members of the public, requesting staff to report back at a matter at a subsequent meeting, or directing staff to place an item on a future agenda. Do we have any speakers for public comment for items that are not on the agenda for today? We have one, Elizabeth. All right. Okay.
Hello. So this is going to be, I really hope that as a planning commission for the city of San Jose that we make an intentional plan to how we're going to help maintain the Black and African American population in Silicon Valley. Me myself, I'm half Black, half Latina, and it is disheartening seeing the small percentage that we have and how it's continuing to dwindle. And we're continuing to be pushed out, either pushed out, displaced, homeless, or dead. And so I think that's important that as we're building and wanting to grow as a city, which I do support, that we keep that in mind so that we're not displacing the people who have been here, the people who are working hard here each and every day. And so I just want to say that, that in all of our things we make sure to keep the importance of the Black community in mind, and we make sure to focus on affordability as much as we can. Not saying that y'all don't, but just making sure that we continue to do that and try to have that framework in all of the decisions that we make. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Any other comments on non-agendized items? All right, seeing none, we will move on to deferrals and removals from the calendar. Are there any item scheduled for this hearing, which is for this evening, for which deferral is being requested, will be taken out of order to be heard first on the matter of deferral or removal. Staff will provide an update on the items for which deferral and removal is being requested. If you want to change any of the deferral dates, recommend, or speak to the question of deferring or removing these or any other items, you should say so at this time. Staff, do we have any items to defer today?
We do not.
All right, thank you. On to the consent calendar. There will be no separate discussion of individual consent calendar items as they are considered to be routine and will be adopted in one motion. If a member of the commission requests debate, separate vote, or recusal on a particular item, then that item may be removed from the consent calendar by the chair and considered separately. The public may comment on the entire consent calendar and any items removed from the consent calendar by the chair. Staff will provide an update on the consent calendar. If you wish to speak on one of these items individual, please come to the podium at this time.
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Oliverio and a second from Vice Chair Bickford to approve the minutes, which is the entirety of the consent calendar. We'll now go to a roll call vote. Vice Chair Bickford?
Yes.
Commissioner Barroso?
Yes.
Commissioner Bondal?
Yes.
Commissioner Cantrell?
Yes.
Commissioner Cow?
Yes.
Commissioner Casey is not here. Commissioner Nguyen?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliverio?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, making that 9-0, and the consent calendar, the motion to approve the consent calendar carries. All right, on to public hearing. Generally, the public hearing items are considered by the Planning Commission in the order in which they appear on the agenda. However, please be advised that the Commission may take items out of order in order to facilitate the agenda, such as to accommodate for public testimony, or may defer discussion of items to a later agenda for public hearing and for time management purposes. Staff, do we have a presentation on CP 24-036?
Yes, we do.
This is the After Bar and Grill.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. My name is Zachary Johnson, Project Manager from the Planning Division. This project consists of a conditional use permit to allow late night use until 2 a.m. Friday through Sunday for an existing public eating establishment located at 1692 Story Road, Suite number 100. The tenant space is currently occupied by the After Bar and Grill public eating establishment and is located within a commercial shopping center. The site is surrounded by single-family residences to the southeast and southwest, commercial uses to the northeast, and Emma Prush Farm Park across Story Road to the northwest. The site has a general planned land use designation of neighborhood community commercial and is within a commercial neighborhood zoning district. Here's the existing floor plan for the approximately 7,442 square foot tenant space where the existing public eating establishment After Bar and Grill operates. The project does not include any external modifications to the existing commercial building or site. The establishment currently operates with the Type 47 ABC license, on sale general eating place. This license type allows the sale of beer, wine, and distilled spirits for on-site consumption. The establishment must operate and maintain the licensed premises as a bona fide eating place. The project was reviewed for consistency with the general plan, the San Jose Municipal Code, the California Environmental Quality Act, the City Council's 24-hour late night policy, and the City Council's policy or public outreach policy. The project was reviewed by the San Jose Police Department, who have stated that they are opposed to the conditional use permit for late night use and will not allow entertainment uses. Staff found that the project is inconsistent with Council Policy 6-27, Area Use Compatibility Finding, which states that 24-hour uses should not be approved unless the facility can operate without detriment to nearby residential uses or the general welfare of the surrounding area. Council Policy 6-27 Police Issues Finding, which states that crime statistics and police safety issues, which are directly related to uses operating between 12 midnight and 6 a.m., will be analyzed and considered in determining the appropriateness of 24-hour uses. And Conditional Use Permit Finding 2100-720A4, which requires that the proposed use at the location requested will not A, adversely affect the peace, health, safety, morals, or welfare of persons residing or working in the surrounding area, or C, be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare. We are unable to find consistency with these findings due to the After Bar and Grill's history of noncompliance with state and local laws. After Bar and Grill has violated their ABC license by not serving food in conjunction with alcohol sales, which is a requirement for a Type 47 license for a public eating establishment, provided live entertainment, including dancers, without an entertainment permit as required by the police department, operated past midnight without a conditional use permit, and received noise and public nuisance citations from the police department. Despite warnings, instruction, and an opportunity to achieve compliance granted by the police department, the project applicant has continued to operate out of compliance with public eating establishment requirements. Per section 2100-720B of the San Jose Municipal Code, the Planning Commission or the City Council shall deny the application where the information submitted by the applicant and or presented at the public hearing fails to satisfactorily substantiate such findings. Staff recommends denial of the conditional use permit. Under CEQA, the project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to section 15301 for existing facilities if approved, and exempt pursuant to section 15270 if denied. This concludes staff's presentation. We have Sergeant Pham from the San Jose Police Department here to answer any questions related to public safety. And we have the applicant team, which includes Representative Javier Campos, Jerry Strangis, and the project applicant Elmer Oriano. Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll have 5 minutes for a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. We are here to request a CUP to extend operating hours for an existing restaurant and bar and grill from midnight to 2 a.m. Mr. Oriana is an experienced restaurant owner with restaurants in Los Altos and Morgan Hill and a previous restaurant in Gilroy. As you all know, with all that's going on in our community, it's been very difficult on restaurants in our city, including the Tropicana Village Shopping Center. I'm sure most of the businesses have experienced a lot of hardship in trying to make ends meet as a thriving business. Mr. Oriana has acknowledged the items discussed in the staff report, and from October 3rd of 2024, Mr. Oriana, to now, Mr. Oriana has worked very hard to correct the violations and operate to the requirements of the City of San Jose ordinance for restaurants and bars, and to comply with his ABC license. Mr. Oriana has agreed to place conditions as part of the CUP that demonstrate his commitment to safety and his confidence that AfterBar in the past year has turned a corner in making and implementing improvements moving forward. Here to discuss the conditions that Mr. Oriana would like to have placed on his establishment is Jerry Strangis.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Jerry Strangis, representing After Bar and Grill. The issue is security and what type of security we will be able to provide. And there's really two choices. There's the secondary employment with active police officers. That's difficult at this time to do that. We would prefer that, and we're going to try to do that. Outside of that, there's armed private security, and we intend to do everything we can to ensure that it is a safe place to be. With that, we're suggesting a 6-month compliance hearing. So rather than taking my word for it right now, we will come back and we will show, and the evidence will show, that we've run a good shop and we deserve to be open for those 2 extra hours. So with that, I would hope that you can support us giving us a shot to be open for 6 months, and we'll make it work. Thank you.
And also in the audience are some of the business owners of the Tropicana Village that, again, have also experienced, hardship in trying to, operate a thriving business. And with that, we're here to take questions and provide you any answers that you might have regarding the project.
Thank you again. Well, first we'll have a public comment. I don't see any cards here. Would anybody, members of the public, like to speak to the item? Please come down. Please come down to the podium, and you have 2 minutes, and state your name, etc.
Okay, my name is Victor Fong. I actually work at Tropicana Shopping Center, and I've seen how Mr. Oriana runs his business. Okay, it's very clean, front and back, and he provides security, when it's busier. And not only that, he takes a bit of responsibility for the whole area. Like back a few weeks ago, there was a homeless person that filled up a shopping cart with cardboard in the back alley, and he actually set it on fire. And Mr. Oriana was close by. He saw him. He shooed away the homeless, possibly could have burnt down the building, and then he put out the fire. So he was a very responsible member of the business community within Tropicana Shopping Center. And I witnessed that happened myself on the security footage, because I worked there at the shopping center. So I'd like to put in a good word for him as a responsible business person.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public that would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we will turn it over to the commissioners. Before we begin, I would like to ask if anybody had any ex parte communications.
Yes, I had ex parte communication with the applicant's team.
I also had ex parte or communications with the applicant's team. I spoke to their representative. Anybody else? All right, we will turn it over to Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see. Thank you, Sergeant Pham, for being here. Thank you for the service you provide to our city as well. I've been on the commission for 5 years, and we quite routinely review either applications for sale of alcohol or extension of business hours. And generally speaking, the police department is neutral. They'll give us a letter that's neutral. That's certainly not the case here. I don't think I've ever seen a worse record of an establishment than this here. According to the police department report that Sergeant Pham prepared, we had 3 significant incidents in 2023, 2 in 2023, 1 in 2024, which include brandishing a weapon and underage subjects inside the business. However, it looks like the police department was going to give a chance to the owner to kind of clean things up. So Sergeant Pham and Lieutenant Payne met with the owner, Elmer Oriana, on June 26, 2024, and explained to him that I'm sure the sergeant and the lieutenant explained the concerns they had about your business and what things you would need to do to get the permit approved. And yet, not even a month after that, at an undercover operation that the police department held, the officers ordered food. Were told there was not food being served. They were served alcohol after midnight in violation of your permit. And issues with doors being locked. I can tell you, as a retired fire chief, that's a huge issue. You're very fortunate that you didn't have a fire in the establishment and have people killed with that. And then, police department visited again on July 26th. Again, violations were found. And again on August 3rd, another undercover officers went into the establishment and found major violations. So I'm a little skeptical that the operator has experience running restaurants, because I can't understand, if you had experience, how these things could happen, especially after the police department met with you and explained what needed to be done. And as far as security goes, that's not the issue here, really. The issue is that you're not operating in accordance with your ABC license. You're serving alcoholic beverages without serving food. You're serving after hours. You're doing all kinds of stuff. So I don't see any reason to approve this permit. I'm going to make a motion we deny the application and approve the staff recommendation.
All right, do we have a second on Commissioner Young's motion? Okay. If we don't have a second, then...
I second the motion.
All right, Commissioner Cow with the second, and we will move to Commissioner Bickford, followed by Commissioners Bondal and Cantrell. Commissioner Bickford.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for the applicant, specifically. We've all heard what Commissioner Young said. So my question is, what functionally has changed? And how would you show that to the community and the officers? The police officers have a heavy weight here that they're carrying in ensuring that the public safety is held. And hearing a police officer and their reports say that they are opposed to this is a fairly heavy weight. So I just want to ask once again, what do you think will be different now?
What is going to be different is that I'm going to do everything that I can to work with the police department to make sure that we don't encounter those issues ever again. And like I say, it's not the first business that I run. I have run a bigger club in Gilroy, and I have worked with the city and the police department for a long time. At the beginning, when I meet with them, I asked them, they told me that they have a project that they're going to start and that they're going to let us know when they're going to start the project. So I think was more of misunderstanding what they were asking me to exactly do on the project that they have on the Tropicana, that they're going to be closing the business for a few months so they can give us the opportunity. So I asked them that I needed, that I have some shows booked, and I needed them to give me sometimes to coordinate with the promoters. And I think it was more about miscommunication or understanding exactly the stuff that they want me to do. So on Wednesday, I think that was Wednesday 1st, or Wednesday 31st, something like that, on October, that I meet with the officer, and I told him that I will comply with everything. And that I called him and I say, seeing that it's going to be the first week that I have to tell my customers that starting from this weekend, we will no longer be staying open after 12, that it might take me a little bit more time to get them out, seeing that it's the first time that I have to communicate as they are leaving the business, and explaining to them that that day we were shutting down, then stop selling at 12 o'clock, so they can understand that from now on, they're no longer going to be able to come to the business and stay after 12. And that's when I explained to Mr. Chow that I'm going to be doing that. He told me, oh, it's okay, Elmer, you can tell it. But exactly at 12:03, you see, the doors were closed because we were not letting anybody coming after that. We just, the people that we have over there, we start telling them that, you know, that our business is going to be closing at 12 o'clock. Afterwards, they came. They give me the citation that day, and I even talked to him, you know, a few days prior to the weekend, that I will be telling my customers that we're going to be closed. It's not that I don't obey the law. I always try to obey the law, because with the police department, we need their support, you know, to keep our business safe. If there is any problem, you know, our priority is that we work with the police department, because we don't want to be afraid of calling the police department, you know, to come and help us when there is a little issue. You know, sometimes people drink, people misbehave, and we always want them to work with us and not be afraid to work with the police department. You see, and all I'm asking is for an opportunity to show them that I'm here to work with them, not to feel afraid of the police department.
Thank you for answering my question. Sergeant Pham, it sounds like you were there at the end of October. Do you have any reason to think that the function of the location has changed from your previous visits?
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chow Pham. I'm a sergeant with the San Jose Police Department, and I'm a supervisor for the Vice Unit. So to answer that specific question, the last time my team or a group of officers was there to conduct some of these inspections was August of last year. So since then, that project that we had during the summer ceased, and so I haven't physically visited or inspected that business since then. So I wouldn't be able to answer if those changes have been made.
It sounded like the applicant said that there was some meeting on October 31st. Can you address that?
Yes, so last year we had a meeting with the applicant, Mr. Oriana, myself, and now Captain Payne in June of 2024, and we had two subsequent meetings, so a total of 3 separate meetings in June, July, and August, speaking with Mr. Oriana and really giving him an opportunity to say, these are the rules, these are the laws and policies you have to follow anyway. We're just reminding you that this is going to work if everybody works. We also had individual meetings with every business owner within Tropicana. So it wasn't necessarily just After Bar. We had about 5 other business owners that we met with individually, provided them the same information, and gave them the same opportunity to be in compliance with the ABC laws and some of the laws we have here in San Jose. And we had positive feedback from those meetings, and during the 2-month project, we were able to really work with those other businesses, and they were able to comply with what we were asking them to do. And unfortunately, like Commissioner Young said, there's some acts in July and August that showed something different with After Bar.
Thank you. I'm finished.
Commissioner Bandal.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. Thank you to the applicant for your application, and thank you, Sergeant Pham, for being here today and respect to your service. We want to see small businesses winning in San Jose, and relatively speaking, you want destinations for young adults to be able to attend and enjoy their nightlife outside of downtown. And if there was something open to 2 in the morning in the East San Jose, it's not a bad idea. Not just in East San Jose, in Willow Glen as well, and in most of our cities. So it's not that we don't want you to win, we want you to win. But some of the things that Commissioner Young brought up are what's scary. So, but I do want to ask the business owner, how long have you been in business? How long have you been operating this business for?
Cities or just in the Tropicana? In the Tropicana, I've been there almost 3 years, since February 2023.
Okay, so you've been in business since 2023. The violations happened in 2023, so just assuming you were kind of new that time. And then, okay, and then you've had a clean record since 2024?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question for staff. The applicant brought up compliance hearing. How does that work? And if we were to give them something and they would come back, is that something that we're open to do? Or how does a compliance hearing really work?
Well, this is the first time essentially we've ever heard a compliance order. I mean, I'm assuming it's the same as a deferral or something to give them an opportunity. So there isn't a term of compliance order necessarily for planning.
So if the applicant, just a hypothesis here, if we were to approve this tonight and they said that they want to do a compliance hearing after 6 months, is that something that the city offers or does not offer?
I mean, it's something I guess the commission can actually say, but I would probably say the word deferral more than a compliance order. Because I think a compliance order has certain types of requirements that you need to put in and to meet, right? That's not something that planning typically does. I'd probably say it's a deferral and that planning commission can recommend more than a compliance order. I'll defer to the city attorneys if they have anything else.
Now that's some quick thinking there. Deferral does sound like what this is. We don't have a process for a compliance hearing that I know of under our code, so that's not something that we could follow. It's not a policy that we have currently, so it would be a deferral and we just come back and see.
Staff does want to clarify that even if the project gets here denied, it doesn't mean the project can't operate. They can still operate as a restaurant until midnight. So really, it's an issue of should we approve the extended hours of their operation. So if you defer it, in theory, they can still operate as a restaurant.
I know it's a huge shopping center there, and it's a lot of foot traffic and a lot of people there, a lot of other shops as well. Is any other shop there until 2 in the morning?
Yeah, not that I'm currently aware of. There are a couple other bars in the area. Sergeant Pham, you got something too?
Yes, there's actually one out of the 5 restaurants and bars that operate in Tropicana, one has a CUP already in place.
So one is operating until 2 in the morning?
as of last summer, they had the conditional use permit in place that allowed them to be open past 2. However, they chose to close at midnight.
Okay, I'm gonna thank you, Chair, that's it. Check.
Thank you. Commissioner Ambrosio.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, that was my question about that 6-month grace period. In terms of if the staff recommendation is approved, how soon can they come back and repetition for a 2 a.m. sales of alcohol?
So the only one that I'm aware of for restriction for denial is a rezoning, which you have to wait a year. Otherwise, there's no other permits that restrict a reapplication after a denial.
So then it would be indefinite, like forever?
No, they can apply again tomorrow if they
Oh,
want.
I see. Okay. Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bickford.
One more question for the applicant. There was a comment about food, and your ABC license requires you to also serve food, and there was a comment that there was no food available. Have you resolved that problem?
Yes, ma'am. We resolved that.
And is it your intention, if you were open till 2 a.m., to have food until 2 a.m.?
To comply with the law.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to add on to that, again, Javier Campos with VER Engineers. He actually, the applicant actually would like for that to be a condition, just so that it's recorded. He'll serve food until he closes.
Thank you so much. One of the questions that I had was, were there any incidents in 2025? The report from the police department has the incidents in 23 and 24, but have there been any incidents in the past year?
Yes, there have. There are about a total of 60 calls related in the area that could be surrounding After Bar, but not necessarily all those calls related here. So the ones that I believe that might be related are 4 specific calls. 1 was a fight, and 3 other ones was an assault and battery.
Regarding this additional condition to add to the conditional use permit, have you discussed it with anybody from the city or the police department or the planning department for the 6 months? Or I'm trying to understand how it worked logistically, or if that's been discussed at all.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, again, Javier Campos with VER Engineers. So in the 2000s, I was sitting up there as well, and I do recall that we did put those conditions on some bar and nightclub owners that had negative comments from PD, and we actually offered it up, the commission, that if they were willing to come back for compliance hearing.
Thank you. Commissioner Ambrosio and then Commissioner Young.
Thank you. Question in terms of what would it take for San Jose Police Department to become neutral in this issue? Is there something that's been communicated to the business owner in terms of what sort of criteria and for how long do they need to maintain that good standing in order for a neutral decision to be rendered from the police department?
That's a great question. We had those discussions not too long ago, and we will review the application very similar to where we review any applicant, where we look at the criteria, where crime stats, crime index, call for service generation, or police resources being utilized. And so we look at a global perspective, and we see the bigger picture. So not only in a vacuum of this is what happened during this 18-month or 12-month period, but a larger picture. So we have to follow set criteria to offer recommendation, whether we stay neutral or opposed. And once we reviewed this at the beginning of this year, it was hard for the PD to overlook what happened during that 12-month period. So the answer for us would be we would review everything again and see how that plays out. So it is hard for us to say, hard for me to say, yes, this applicant in good faith in the past 6 months has proven a good track record. This is what they did. But 8 months prior to that, they had all sorts of issues. So we take a look at everything and see what we would offer as our recommendation. So it would, for us to become neutral, I believe we would have to have a larger sample size.
Right, perfect, thank you. And would you say it's a combination of the issues that have arisen at the bar and the location in terms of just the phone calls that come out of that area? Or is there a way to really tease out what are their issues and what are the issues of the surrounding community?
Yes, so for clarity, we did a deeper dive for the calls for service that are being generated in that block in the Tropicana, and we did a deeper dive saying which broke down each individual call, which was attributed to after bar, which ones were not. And the ones that Commissioner Young pointed out, it was 2 years ago that it was drawn to my attention when the watch commanders that worked in the area said during Thanksgiving there was a large fight that broke out, and it was attributed to after bar. And from then until August of 2024, we really did a deep dive and really tried to work collaboratively with all the business owners to try to correct some of these behaviors. And I saw it as a success because there's some business owners that are here, that are present during this meeting, that we spoke to, and we worked together to try to make their business successful and thrive like some of the commissioners have spoke about. So we saw some success, and we believe that we as a police department gave plenty of opportunities to show the path for what success looks like. So we can take a look at it again, review and assess.
Right, perfect, thank you. I think there's a path forward. I think just possibly a little bit more time to establish that good standing, to clean up some of the mistakes, I guess, or some of those things that were that were brought up. But I could see where there's an opportunity, right? If it's a no today, it may not be a no tomorrow, and it looks like there's, from the planning department, opportunity to re-petition this or to resubmit, and the police department, I think, is pretty clear about what they're looking for in order for them to give a neutral stance. So if it's not today, I think there is a path forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, Commissioner Ambrosio actually just said what I was going to say, which is that the city attorney's already told us that we don't have a compliance process. However, our planning staff has told you that you can reapply as soon as you want to. And what I would recommend is that you meet with the police department and get a plan going forward and establish a certain amount of time and then come back and reapply. So with that in mind, I'm going to call the question and ask for a vote.
What's the motion?
Move to call the question.
Staff recommendation.
You have to make the motion, though, right? There's no motion.
It's still on the table.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Cantrell. If you call the question, then we have to vote whether we're calling the question. So we have to vote on that, City Attorney.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to a vote to call the question.
Chair, excuse me. If Commissioner Cantrell would like to chime in, that's totally fine.
The question's been called. You gotta call, you have to vote on the question.
All right, vote on the question.
All right, Vice Chair Bickford.
Refresh my memory.
So
Exactly which way?
Yeah, so Commissioner Young called the question to ask for a vote, and it wasn't until afterward that Commissioner Cantrell had raised his hand. So we're going to vote on whether or not we vote at this time.
It was.
Oh, it was on? Yeah. Okay. We still vote on whether to call the question. You can vote now. That we're not going to vote right now. Allow Commissioner Cantrell to speak, and then we'll vote. Let's have a
I'm
vote.
voting no because I believe Commissioner Cantrell should be allowed to speak.
Commissioner Barocio.
If no will get us one more input, yes, then I also vote no.
Commissioner Cantrell.
I'd say no for now.
My apologies. Commissioner Bundal.
No.
Commissioner Cow.
No.
Commissioner Casey's absent. Commissioner Nguyen.
No for now.
Commissioner Oliverio.
No.
Commissioner Young.
No.
And I am a no, making that unanimous no. So we will move to Commissioner Cantrell's comments,
Okay.
questions.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Young. I understand the spirit of your ask. Actually, I'd like to ask the applicant a question, and then I have a question for the officer as well. I just want to ask you, can you please characterize your relationship with the police department?
With the police department here in San Jose,
Yes.
since I've been here, a little bit rough, but still trying to see if they can give me the opportunity to work with them to show them that I have, that I'm different than what they think. Because I have also, you can get reference from Morgan Hill, Gilroy, and Los Altos. I have worked with the city and the police department, and I have never encountered what I'm going through here in San Jose, but I still believe that all I can do is ask for an opportunity for Mr. Chow to be able to work with him, to make sure that we can make Tropicana a better place and give something nice to the community, because I have always worked to be part of the community and to help the community. It has never been to be giving problems to the police department. My issue with the police, I think, has been more understanding or communicating what I'm trying to speak across. So, but I'm totally different than how he addressed it, that I'm a very bad operator. I think all I'm asking is for the opportunity to be able to show that I'm not like, that I deserve the opportunity to show that I can make a difference in the Tropicana. As long as the police department is willing to work with me, I think we can do something nice there.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Officer, I'm not sure if you have the data or the information on this. The time where food was not being served but alcohol was, what time was that?
So great question. So Commissioner, I'll just go down from the notes that we have from the memo that we prepared. So on July 20th of 2024, undercover officers entered in around 11:30 at night, and from 11:30 until they left, about within an hour, no food was served. Alcohol was. So that's one example. A week later, went in around 11:45 at night. Same thing. No food was served. Only alcohol was served, and they were there for about an hour as well. And the same thing on August 3rd of that year, went in around 11:20 at night, and then this is when we were there for close to an hour and a half, and then that's actually the same night we made contact with Mr. Oriana as well.
Okay. What time does your kitchen close?
Right now, Right now, at 11:30, because we're only able to stay open until 12, because we have to start selling alcohol 30 minutes before closing.
At what time?
30 minutes before closing. So let's say you guys give us the opportunity to stay open, we have to close the kitchen at 1:30 a.m. every day. because we cannot be serving food afterwards because people will need more time to stay inside.
What time do you make last call for drinks?
1:30. Right now, 11:30.
11:30. Okay. So explain to me how a restaurant would not have food before the kitchen closes.
The restaurant?
Yes, correct.
All the other restaurants that I have, they close, Les Altos, they close at 9, on the weekend at 10, Morgan Hill at 9, on the weekend at 10.
So I'm asking, if you are a restaurant and your kitchen closes 20 minutes before closing time, how are you out of food any time before that?
We are not out of food. We always have food.
Language.
Oh, the day that he came, there was a person that was new that we hired from other place that she worked at the bar, and she thought that we didn't have food, but we did have people in the kitchen when people order food because we have to have the kitchen open that day. And I explained that, but it's, like, it's my words again what they say, especially when an employee told them, but I tried to correct that. So now I make sure that all my employees know since the day that we hired them.
Do you have a manager on staff?
Excuse me?
Do you have a manager on staff?
Yes, sir. Now we do.
Did you have a manager on staff at that time?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just one more question for you. The community that surrounds the area, how would you characterize the crime in that community? High, medium, low?
I would say for San Jose, it's a medium to high concentration of crime in the area, especially on King Road and Story Road.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand. I think we should always try to be as fair as possible.
Thank you.
So I want to understand, because sometimes we don't have good relationships with other people. It happens. So that would set up a relationship where you'd get reported for things all the time. But that does not appear to be exactly the case. Looking at a restaurant that has a closing time, and you told me what it was, then you should have had food available, period. I mean, you may not have every menu item available, but you can still serve food. And you understand the reason for serving food in that establishment is the absorption of alcohol is deterred by eating. That makes you more palatable to the community.
Yes, sir.
However, it appears to me that there's a propensity for bad outcomes that surround you. So I think when that's the case, the community deserves the right to have very clear guidelines for what behavior is acceptable from its bar owners. A bar license is a privilege. A very unique privilege. In order to stay consistent with what the community would need from you, you have to stay very close to the law. It's really important. So with that, I really hope that you can establish a much better record with the police so that you can grow your business. I fully support that. But we just need to make sure that the community is not harmed. That's what we have to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Oh, I'm sorry. I had one additional question for the applicant or for the owner. You said that you never encountered what you're seeing here in San Jose at your other establishments. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Like, what is there something unique about just the location or police enforcement or?
If you guys check my records from the other city, you can check with the police department in Los Altos, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy, and review if I ever have any issues with my license or with the police department, neither with the city. It's the first time that I have encountered this situation here in San Jose. And I don't wanna, seeing that we're in this, I respect Mr. Chow, and I don't wanna say any comments because, you know, it's the police department, you know, and sometimes you have to respect that. But, so I just wanna leave it at that. It's just a little bit different. I have encountered like a wall here in San Jose to do business. It's just a little bit different than the other cities, how they address the problem. To me, you know, the police department is to serve and protect and work with the community. And I can say a lot more, but I will not say anything. You know, sometimes you have to stay quiet and just do what the law tells you to do. So all I'm asking them is to give me the opportunity to be able to do business. Simple. You know, that's why we put the restrictions, so at least we can show that we can do things the right way.
Thank you. You know, I think that, like Commissioner Cantrell said, it's a privilege to be able to do business in this town, but particularly at that intersection because it's so well known. I actually stumbled across a book in a library in Los Angeles, sat down in the library and read the entire book. The book was about that particular intersection and including that particular Plaza Tropicana. And I think what you see here is us really wanting your business to thrive, but it's very difficult to overlook the multiple infractions that have occurred in the past few years. And I think a big desire from that area is public safety, and that is, and it seems like this establishment is sort of a detriment to public safety, and that's really what we're worried about when, and you know, answering to the folks in the neighborhood. Although we want you to survive, or to thrive, and to do well, and to make that area of that intersection a beautiful place. Those are my comments. We have Commissioner Oliverio and then Commissioner Bickford.
Thank you, Chair. As we've covered tonight, the applicant or any applicant under this circumstance can apply later. But with that process is time and money. And if we want them to comply, it would be better for them to use that time and money to make themselves a stellar business. So what I would suggest as an alternative, rather than deny this, simply defer this 6 months to the last meeting in May. That'll give the business owner more time. It'll give the police department a longer track record, and that you do your best to manage this. And I think then we as a commission must have some understanding, should this come back in May, what is the test? Is it 1 incident? Is it 2 incidents? Personally, having worked in restaurants in a long time, you sometimes can't control who comes into your business. And if God knows what the outcome of a sports game is, things can get crazy. So with that said, I would make the suggestion to defer this item 6 months to the last second meeting in May, and then there should be no more than 2 incidents, but of course the police should evaluate. There might be 0, and there might be 2, there might be 1, I don't know what it'll be, but because if we deny the permit today, the application, there's no incentive to the business owner to operate it any better than it is today. By deferring it for 6 months, they have skin in the game to comply. And if it doesn't turn out, my guess is they're going to work a lot harder the next 6 months. So I would just offer that as an alternative. If I see a nod on the commission, I would, make an alternative motion to substitute motion to, I'll restate it again, sorry, please, to defer the item 6 months, the last meeting in May, and then, and this is where we might want to discuss, and to have a criteria of no more than 2 incidents. And of course, the police providing the input. That would be a substitute motion.
Can we, next we'll have discussion, but would the applicant like to say anything?
So the business owner would prefer for you to make a decision tonight, with all due respect.
Then I withdraw my substitute motion. If it's not, doesn't work for you, then there's no point in making the motion and providing you an alternative. So no substitute, I'm withdrawing my substitute motion.
All right. Commissioner Bickford.
Thank you, Chair. First, Mr. Ariano, I want to say thank you for being a great member of our community. The testimony of one of the other owners in the facility said that you did this great thing in putting out a fire that's respecting our community and supporting it. I personally would really love to give this to you because I understand the economic impact of those 2 additional hours. I'm just finding it really hard to, given that I haven't seen the actual track record of having the doors shut at midnight, making sure people are out and safe. And I would have liked to have given you that 6 months and had you come back and tell us how you've created a good relationship with the local beat policeman and that you have done everything up to your ABC permit. And then I think this entire committee would have handed you an easy win on this. At this point in time, I don't feel like we can give that to you.
Commissioner Barocio.
How much would it cost for the applicant to reapply? Like, how much is it on the business side to try this again?
It'd be approximately $28,000, roughly.
28,000. Okay, so I don't know if y'all want to sidebar on that, because I don't know if he's reading the room. 28,000 or 6 months.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I believe the business owner would like to be able to have this deferred, but economic-wise, he might not be in business in 6 months. And so he'd prefer for the decision to be made this evening. Thank you.
A question for the city attorney. Would deferring affect their ability to appeal the decision to city council?
You're asking to defer can you rephrase the question?
So if they were to, say, agree or want to do something like defer it for 6 months until May, would that affect their ability to, and the commission voted to recommend that?
They would then appeal that deferral decision?
Or would it affect their ability to appeal?
There's, I don't think.
If it's deferred, there's no council action.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no action. There would be no action, right? So they couldn't appeal it if they, anyway, if it was deferred. Okay. All right, yes, that's the question I had. All right, Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Chair. I'm opposed to a deferral. I don't think it's a good idea for us to put conditions on whether we approve it. We don't know what could be 2 explosions in the building or 2, right? You understand what I'm saying, Commissioner Oliverio? So, and I don't think that's a good, I've never supported us putting conditions. I'd rather have conditions come from our planning staff. I'm not sure what else there is to discuss. We've given the applicant, I think, 3 times now to accept a delay. He does not want a delay. He's told us he wants a vote. So I would recommend we, I'm not going to call the question. I would recommend that we do what the applicant is requesting and take a vote. Thanks.
Anything else? All right, then we shall go to a roll call vote. Vice Chair Bickford.
I vote to support the recommendation of staff.
Commissioner Barocio.
Yes.
Commissioner Bandal.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Regrettably, yes.
Commissioner Cow.
Yes.
Commissioner Casey is absent. Commissioner Nguyen?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliveira?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
And I myself am a yes, making that 9-0, and the recommendation, the motion to approve the recommendation by staff passes.
So clarifying, it's a motion to accept the denial.
To accept the denial.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to, item PP 24-012. That is item 5B, the Eichler agenda item. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Yes, we do. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and Planning Commissioners. My name is Dana Peak. I'm a Principal Planner and Historic Preservation Officer for the city. The item that we have tonight is the San Jose Eichler Neighborhood Design Standards. And just a brief overview of the standards. The purpose of the standards, they were written to establish clear and objective design standards for Eichler neighborhoods listed in the Historic Resources Inventory. They were designed to provide predictable guidance for property owners, applicants, and staff project review, and to preserve the historic and architectural significance of Eichler homes while allowing for compatible updates, additions, and new construction. And for those who may not be familiar with Eichler homes, they are mid-century modern homes that were built in San Jose by developer Joseph Eichler between 1952 and 63 in San Jose. He started developing in Sunnyvale in 1949 and then moved to other cities like Palo Alto and Redwood City. San Jose has 5 Eichler tract developments. They're very distinctive buildings, mid-century modern features. With elements like one-story massing, low, broad gable roofs, post and beam construction, and vertical groove plywood siding. The key features of the standards are that this was a community-driven process by the residents of the Fair Glen Additions neighborhood. The design standards are only for Eichler tracts that are listed on the Historic Resources Inventory, and currently that's only one neighborhood, the Fair Glen Additions neighborhood. There's no new or additional requirements that are coming with these design standards. Exterior changes for properties listed in the inventory already require a planning permit, so it's not going to change any of the regulations. It includes optional design guidelines, design guidance beyond the mandatory standards. There's no retroactive application of standards, and there's no, the standards don't apply to interiors or landscaping. They align with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and also the existing document that we use to review changes to historic properties on the inventory, which is the Your Old House guidelines. Where these are not as adequate for mid-century modern buildings is they mainly have examples of 1900s type architecture and revival styles, and the examples that they provide really are a little bit deficient with mid-century modern buildings. They're very distinct from other buildings, and so this serves to provide clarity for applicants. Just to summarize the guidelines, you can see the types of elements that they include, standards on massing and additions, roof lines, exterior cladding materials, windows, doors, etc. We had a fairly extensive public outreach process. We had a project website that was set up in September of 2024. The draft guidelines standards were circulated in October and November 2024. There was a community meeting that was held in October 2024 that went before the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting on November 6th in terms of the draft. And public input was received, and that input was taken into consideration. The document was just finalized last August. The applicable CEQA is a exemption, both common sense exemption and for historic resource rehabilitation, so there's no further environmental review required. So staff recommends consideration of the exemption under CEQA and recommend to City Council adoption of a resolution approving the San Jose Eichler Neighborhood Objective Design Standards. It will go to Council on December 2nd. And that concludes staff's report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, we will do public comment. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. We only have one card for this item. From Sally Zarnovitz.
Thank you. I am a member of the Fair Glen Additions Preservation Committee that asked for these guidelines. We were listed on the National Register a couple of years ago, thanks to with support of the city, and people really were looking for, again, specific guidance as to how to maintain the houses and also to get the streamlined single-family house permit that planning staff reviews. That process has been going really well from the neighborhood's perspective. And also, I just wanted to say that the Landmarks Commission had a retreat, and staff put together a great presentation. They came out to the neighborhood. We got a lot of planners who are actually looking at this work to be able to walk through the neighborhood with us, and that was in a kind of a very cool moment for them to actually see how their work is built in the field. And so the neighborhood is really thriving, and I think it's a great example of, you know, when the community, when people want preservation and they proactively agree to that and take pride in it. Also allowing for, of course, you know, continued use of the houses and even, of course, you know, ADUs or whatever, that, you know, understanding that we still need density and we need housing in the city, but to maintain the character of the place. And these guidelines go a long way to doing that. And we, you know, huge thank you to staff for working on this. Thank you.
Do we have any other members of the public who would like to comment? If not, we'll conclude public comment and provide an additional, well, there's no applicant. So I'll turn it over to the commissioners. Commissioner Oliverio.
Thank you, Chair. I do as well want to thank staff and Sally and the Fair Glen Eichler track. Back in 2013, when I was on the city council, I hosted a documentary film viewing of Eichler's people inside glass houses, and we had about 60 plus people in this small room, and the majority were from the Fair Glen Eichler tract. And by preserving these neighborhoods, it allows now and later for people to literally drive through history. And the fact that Eichler owners are some of the proudest homeowners I know, I'm excited that I was actually on the Planning Commission to be here to do this. So I'd like to make a motion to approve.
I'd like to second.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Commissioner Barocio. Apologies.
Thank you. I see myself approving as well, but I do have a question for staff. I do remember that there was a community, I think on Stockton, and they said, oh my goodness, it takes us 3 years or 10 years to change a window because of certain historical designations, and it sort of backfired, like on some community members. Is this one of these situations where if we approve these standards, that what sort of changes may be typical now, but may not be feasible moving forward, that maybe a homeowner should know now before we approve and this continues to move forward?
I wouldn't say there really are any. I think that these modern homes are a little bit different than some of the older homes in the Shealy Alameda district. They tend to have wood frame windows and that type of thing, which are their character defining features. Because these are mid-century modern houses, they have more, modern 20th century, where after, World War II, you have aluminum windows and other types of windows that come in. So they're a little bit more compatible, with more modern materials that we see today. So I wouldn't say there's really anything that would be an issue. It's a little bit different animal than that other district.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Oliverio and a second from Commissioner Bickford. We'll go to a roll call vote. Vice Chair Bickford.
Yes.
Commissioner Borosio.
Yes.
Commissioner Bandal.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, and thank you for your work as well.
Commissioner Cow.
Yes.
Commissioner Casey is absent. Commissioner Nguyen.
Yes.
Commissioner Oliverio.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
I myself am a yes, so the motion to recommend for staff's recommendation carries 9-0. Okay, moving on to item PP 25-005. At this time, we'll have a 5-minute presentation. Would this be from the applicant? Or, I'm sorry, not the applicant, it's from staff. My apologies.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, Planning Commissioners. Again, Dana Peak, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of San Jose. Tonight we're here to consider amendments to the Historic Preservation Ordinance. Just as background, the Historic Preservation Ordinance is Chapter 13.48 of the Municipal Code. This is a different section than you normally deal with, which is Title 20. It lives in its own section because historic preservation doesn't regulate use, so it's kind of a completely different section. But the ordinance defines the historic preservation framework for the city. It establishes the historic resources inventory, lays out a process and criteria for the designation of city landmarks and city historic districts. It lays out a process for the issuance of historic preservation permits for exterior changes to landmarks and historic districts, and provides some incentives like historical property contracts or Mills Act contracts, which provide a property tax break in exchange for preservation of homes and buildings. It also regulates historic districts and landmarks through historic preservation permits. The purpose of the ordinance is to maintain the historic significance of the city landmarks and districts and the community identity of city council designated landmarks and districts. So just to be clear, this ordinance only applies to designated city landmarks. We have approximately 200, and then we have several city landmark districts. So it doesn't apply to everything in the historic resources inventory. So how the buildings, the landmarks and districts, buildings in the districts are preserved are through a design review process. A historic preservation permit is required for voluntary changes to landmarks and properties and districts on the exterior. It ensures that projects can adapt old buildings for new uses in a compatible way, and those projects are compatible with the historic materials and features of landmarks and districts, and they follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. Projects that are detrimental to historic character are typically denied unless somebody applies for hardship. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to do the slide. So there is a existing provision in the Historic Preservation Ordinance for hardship. Hardship is specifically for projects where there's technical, structural, or economic infeasibility for a compatible rehabilitation. And the applicant typically submits documentation to substantiate that. So it's architect engineer reports, property expenses, how they tried to sell or rent, performas, that type of thing to establish that an existing building couldn't be rehabilitated. When we're reviewing historic preservation permits on a parallel process, there's also the CEQA analysis that's conducted. Historic districts and city landmark properties are considered historical resources under CEQA, so we have to comply with CEQA regardless of what our ordinance says. Projects with significant unavoidable impacts, which would be a detriment, require environmental impact reports, mitigation measures, and alternative analysis. And if there's a significant unavoidable impact, then City Council adopts a statement of overriding considerations. So we've had other projects that have gone probably before the Planning Commission. We had a 4th Street Pizza project that was the demolition of a city landmark. We've had another project on 19 North 2nd Street, and those all used the hardship provision. But there was also an EIR disclosing those significant and unavoidable impacts. The ordinance amendments are really coming forth to address a court case. The Court of Appeal issued certain findings in March of last year in a case, the St. Clair Historic Preservation Foundation versus the City of San Jose. The findings of the court were that the EIR that was prepared for this project, which is Levitt Pavilion, was properly conducted and certified, but the project had detrimental effects under the Historic Preservation Ordinance, but we issued a Historic Preservation Permit despite those detrimental effects, and that the ordinance lacked clarity on addressing projects that are detrimental. The court said that the city may consider amendments to the Historic Preservation Ordinance to provide a path for such discretion, but that it didn't exist at the time that the permit was approved. The proposed amendments are to 2 sections. One is the definitions section, which is 13.48.20. The changes are to clarify the definition of historic district and landmark, and to add 3 definitions for detrimental to address the court case, historic integrity, and substantial alteration, which support clarity for evaluating our historic preservation permit applications. The other section that's proposed to be amended in the ordinance is 13.48.240, and this is the findings section of the ordinance to issue historic preservation permits. As I said earlier, currently only hardship allows for approval of projects where there's a detriment to the city landmark or property in a district. And what's proposed is that City Council can override detrimental effects if there are economic, legal, technical, or other benefits that outweigh that impact. Projects with significant and unavoidable impacts under CEQA already require a statement of overriding considerations, as I mentioned that we prepared for other projects. And the findings mirror CEQA override process under the Public Resources Code and guidelines, allowing approval despite the significant and unavoidable impacts that cannot be fully mitigated. Just for context in your packet, we did a survey of a number of California cities about what other provisions cities have. Mostly looked at the larger cities. Most California cities do not have an override provision beyond hardship, so the hardship provision is a very typical provision in a historic preservation ordinance, which provides relief. But there are a few that provide specific findings that are more defined than what's proposed. Sacramento has an override for general plan and community goal purposes, and there are specific findings to make that override. Pasadena has a compelling public interest only for demolition provision, and again, there's specific findings around that. That's in your packet. And San Diego has an override for capital improvement projects only, again with specific findings. The item was heard by the Historic Landmarks Commission in a hearing on October 1st. The Historic Landmarks Commission requested that staff clarify the meaning of impair within the definition that's proposed for substantial alteration, and clarify that any project complying with the Secretary of the Interior standards is not a substantial alteration, and to limit the broad application of override by providing clear boundaries and decoupling the finding from CEQA and providing separate demolition findings. At that time, the Commission decided to continue the item to November 5th to allow for additional input and for time for staff to bring back some recommendations modifying that language. The item was heard again on November 5th in a Historic Landmarks Commission hearing. The Historic Landmarks Commission recommended approval to City Council, but they made a number of modifications to the language that they're recommending to the City Council that's outlined, in your packet. The Commission recommended modifying the proposed definition of substantial alteration to clarify that work in conformance with the Secretary of the Interior standards would not be a substantial alteration. They recommended adding a definition for impair in relation to substantial alteration, and to modify the override finding to limit its broad application. I won't go over these too detailed, they're all in your packet. But you can see the underlined items are, again, trying to provide a little bit more direction about how it's supposed to be used, that it provides a clear, measurable benefit to the community. It's necessary for a specific public purpose that can't be accomplished through any other means. That it won't establish a precedent, so each analysis or project would be evaluated on its own merit, and that there would be specific findings stated in a resolution of the unique circumstances justifying that approval. The option that was recommended by the Historic Landmarks Commission laid out one finding that's more general for city-sponsored projects on city land or facilities, And then a separate finding for private projects where there are 5 separate findings that would be made for the override. As part of our CEQA analysis, the city prepared an addendum to the certified Envision San Jose 2040 General Plan Final EIR and Downtown Strategy 2040 Final EIR. The reason for this is that both those EIRs acknowledge that certain projects could result in significant and unavoidable impacts to historic resources. There was also a detailed cumulative impact analysis where there was going to be a significant impact in terms of the cumulative effect of demolition with regard to those plans. And also that override was specifically contemplated in those documents under certain circumstances. Also, that project level CEQA review will still be required, as you see as projects come before you when there's a detriment, and that will all still be analyzed separately on a project-by-project basis. Your recommendation will be made to the City Council, and the City Council will be considering any specific language that you might have, and the Historic Landmarks Commission's recommendation, as well as staff's recommendation, which is in the ordinance and text amendments that are in your packet. And then if the council decides to move forward, there'll be a second reading on December 16th. So staff's recommendation is to adopt a resolution approving the addendum to the Downtown Strategy 2040 and Envision San Jose 2040 EIRs, and to recommend to City Council amending Section 13.48.20, which is the definitions section for detrimental, historic integrity, substantial alteration, clarifying the definitions for historic district and landmark, and adding new permit findings for override of detrimental impacts in Section 13.48.240. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, if you'd permit me, before we begin public comment, I'd like to add a little bit of context, legal context. I have a brief statement here that might be a little long for some of you, but if you'll indulge me, I'd like to give a little bit of a history lesson. So there's been a lot of interest surrounding this amendment and the litigation that gave rise to this amendment involving the St. James Historic District, Levitt Pavilion Project, and now, as Ms. Peak mentioned, this hearing is about the ordinance amendment, not about the Levitt Pavilion Project. However, I feel compelled to give you some background about the litigation so that you know how we got to this point of amending our historic preservation ordinance. So November 10th, 2015, 10 years ago, City Council approved the St. James Revitalization Strategy, and the revitalization strategy included a multi-pronged approach to restoring the park, including addressing homelessness and feeding programs, enhanced maintenance, providing activation to encourage park use, establishing an updated capital vision for the park, and establishing park governance and suitable and sustainable funding strategies. So after 2015, the Levitt Foundation folks came in with some funding and a mission aimed at revitalizing blighted areas around the U.S., and the design for the project took shape. In 2019, after lots of staff and community work, the Parks Department applied for a historic preservation permit that Ms. Peak had mentioned for this music pavilion. And the city hired a consultant to conduct 2 historic reports as part of the environmental impact report for the project. And if you didn't know, historical resources are recognized as part of the environment under CEQA. On October 27, 2020, City Council adopted the project EIR and master plan. The EIR found the project would have significant and unavoidable impacts to cultural resources, meaning St. James Park, as well as aesthetics, noise, and parks and recreation areas under CEQA, regardless of the implementation of mitigation measures. However, stated in the EIR, The environmental analysis included an historic expert disagreement on the application of historic and cultural impact standards as it relates to the significant historic impact being of cultural significance and not just physical significance. And as noted in the EIR, many historic features of St. James Park have been lost or reduced over time, and new features have been consistently added since 1980 following the evaluation of listing the park in the National Historic Register, or the National Register of Historic Places. So because the EIR found significant and unavoidable impacts, the certification of the EIR required the adoption of a statement of overriding considerations. Statement of overriding considerations is a written statement explaining the specific reasons why the social, economic, legal, technical, and other beneficial aspects of the proposed project outweigh the unavoidable adverse environmental impacts and why the lead agency is willing to accept those impacts. So that's listed in Public Resources Code section 21081B, that's CEQA. The City Council adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding the benefits of the project outweighed the impacts. Benefits included consistency with general plan policies, implementation of the St. James Park revitalization strategy, economic benefits detailed in the Trust for Public Land Study, goals achieved through the Activate SG strategic plan, etc. All of these benefits were explained in written findings as to why the City Council chose to accept the significant and unavoidable impacts under CEQA and certify the EIR. So now we come to the issuance of the historic preservation permit for the project, which also required its own findings, not based on state law, but based on our local San Jose Municipal Code. It went through 3 hearings before being issued by the planning director, an HLC hearing, and 2 director's hearings. The planning director approved the historic preservation permit on October 28, 2020, with the additional conditions of approval as recommended by the HLC and with the certification of the project's EIR. The HP permit, however, did not find that the project would be a detriment to the historic district, despite the CEQA finding of a significant and unavoidable impact to the historic district. The director found, in compliance with the requirements of San Jose Municipal Code 13.48.240, that subject to conditions, the work will not be detrimental to the significant architectural, cultural, historical, and aesthetic interest or value of St. James Park, and is consistent with the purposes of Chapter 13.48 of the San Jose Municipal Code. Because, and it lists 6 findings, which I won't read here, but basically preserving the park's location, preserving continues historic use as a community park, preserve most of the significant character defining features, relates to historic design, intent, etc. But I will say that the HP permit does list that while the EIR concluded the impacts to cultural resources are significant and unavoidable, the design of St. James Park has continued to evolve as a center of civic life, and the programming of public events and their related structures, such as the proposed Performing Arts Pavilion, are viewed as evolutionary changes within the cultural landscape of the locally significant historical resource that are consistent with its historic sense of place and with the purpose of the Historic Preservation Ordinance. St. James Park will continue to qualify as a contributing property to the locally designated St. James Square City Landmark District and is also eligible for designation as a candidate city landmark. All right, almost last page. The HP permit process contains with it the discretion for the planning director, the planning commission, or the city council as applicable to decide whether or not a project will be detrimental to a historic resource. In addition to all the evidence, the historic reports, the community input, the application of the Secretary of Interior standards, the decision maker decides whether the project will be detrimental to the significant architectural, cultural, historical, or aesthetic interest or value of St. James Park and is consistent with the purposes of Chapter 13.48. The determination of what is detrimental involves the weighing of benefits and evidence. So, fast forward, the St. Clair Historic Preservation Foundation, which is connected to the St. Clair Club, a private gentleman's club located across the street from St. James Park, eventually sued the city, challenging the EIR and the HP permit. The city prevailed at the trial court level. The case was appealed to the 6th District Court of Appeal. The city prevailed on the CEQA challenge but lost on the historic preservation permit challenge. Ultimately, the Court of Appeal decided on its own, without cited legal authority, that significant and unavoidable impacts under CEQA must equal a determination of detriment under the city's own historic preservation ordinance. In its opinion, issued on March 12, 2024, the 6th District stated, quote, "We do not view the city's proffered interpretation of the ordinance, infused with overriding discretion that appears nowhere in it, as correct. What's more, the city has the authority to amend the ordinance if it so chooses to expressly provide for overriding discretion currently lacking," end quote. The court goes on to say that historic preservation ordinance, quote, "in its omission of a provision parallel to CEQA's statement of overriding considerations, the ordinance does not include a discretionary override once detriment under the ordinance, however assessed, is found," end quote. Following this language, city staff sought to provide for such an overriding discretion, adapting CEQA's provision from the Historic Resources Code 21081B to create a parallel provision in the Historic Preservation Ordinance. So here we are, currently with an Historic Preservation Ordinance that allows the decision maker to weigh evidence, consistency with the Secretary of Interior standards, consistency with the general plan, public benefits, and then decide whether or not it's a detriment, to now having to create a provision to specifically allow for overriding discretion. I just want to make clear that we're being forced to codify a provision that we believe already exists within our code. Because if a project has significant and unavoidable impacts under CEQA and requires an overriding statement, shouldn't the decision maker be able to weigh all the evidence and benefits and decide whether there is a detriment or not through written findings under our own historic preservation ordinance? Unfortunately, a common reading that CEQA impacts somehow equal detrimental impacts under our local ordinance led to the city paying out over $650,000 in attorney's fees paid out of our city parks trust just to create an override provision that virtually already exists. So this amendment's not going to lead to any changes in preservation or new impacts. It's just going to clarify what we believe already exists. Thanks.
All right, before I turn it over to the commissioners, I would just like to ask, did anybody have any ex parte communications in relation to this item?
No, but is there public comment?
Yes, we will. We can move on to public comment first then. I have about a dozen cards here. We'll have 2 minutes each. Let's start with, please line up behind the podium or on the stairs. We'll start with Suzanne St. John Crane, Sally Zarmitz, and Michael McDermott.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your service, and I really appreciate the City Attorney's very thoughtful explanation of the history. Many folks in the audience tonight live that history and have been working on this project longer than it took the SAP building to get built, 13 years. The lawsuit that brought us to this moment resulted in the Court of Appeals telling the city to make changes, as was stated, to its historic preservation ordinance in order to be completely transparent about the authority you already have. And so the city is doing exactly that. I just want to encourage you to not get distracted by manufactured concerns or save the St. James Historic District. This does not give the city carte blanche to go bulldoze buildings. This is required based on a lawsuit that happened so that we can move forward. And I just want to share that as of the end of August, the City of San Jose, the Levitt Pavilion of San Jose, and the Levitt Foundation signed a contract that was 8 years in the making. We have a deal. This is moving forward, and we're in the middle of campaigns. We are so excited to be respectful stewards of this park and to actually kickstart the transformation that was envisioned by the city 10 years ago now, and to be a thoughtful, respectful contributor to this historic park. So commissioners, just want to thank you again. Let's move the language forward that is not that uncommon when you look at other big cities, and so that we can move our city forward and be a contributor of over $14 million of economic activity, we predict, to downtown San Jose, make it safer and kickstart the transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sally Zarmitz.
Hi, I'm also speaking this evening with PAC SJ. Not to be too mushy, but I was thinking driving down here the first time I stepped foot in downtown San Jose. I had grown up in the Bay Area. I was a young architect. I'd lived in Boston. I'd lived in New York City. I came back to California, and somebody invited us to dinner at Gordon Biersch, right on San Fernando. It was a beautiful summer night, and we could sit in that warm patio, you know, and I thought, I had no idea this existed. I had no idea these beautiful buildings stood here. And so, you know, I credit the preservation ordinance for the fact that those buildings were there when I first went there and that they're still there today. And so PAC has been watching these ordinance provisions very closely. The court did say that the city could make these changes for public buildings. They could specifically make provisions to make overrides for public projects. And that's really what we're asking you for. Go ahead and do that. Cities need to evolve. They need to, you know, live and breathe. They're additive. And so it makes sense to do this in order to allow the project to move forward, but not to weaken the whole ordinance. So we ask you just to put the word public in that provision so that this applies to public projects, much as you see in like Pasadena, for instance. And that's it. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Next will be Michael McDermott, and then we will have Sean Atkinson, Sally Schrader, and Alexandra Urbanowski.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michael McDermott. I've been a San Jose resident for over 30 years, and I've lived in District 3 for the last 15. I'm here to urge you to recommend the Historic Preservation Ordinance language as written by the Planning Department and City Attorney's Office. This clarification, I believe, is essential to move forward with the Levitt Pavilion project in St. James Park. As the Court of Appeal already confirmed, the city has the authority to balance a project's impact against its broader community benefits. This ordinance simply codifies that authority, ensuring transparency and fairness in evaluating important civic projects for our city. I'm also here to speak in support of the Levitt Pavilion. The Levitt Pavilion represents over a decade of collaboration between the city, the Levitt Foundation, and the Friends of Levitt Pavilion San Jose. This project will transform St. James Park into a vibrant community gathering space, and I think the numbers tell a powerful story. According to the San Jose Downtown Association, 92% of park visitors feel safe when there's an event in the park, but only 30% feel safe when it's empty. Activation equals safety for our citizens. Beyond safety, the Levitt Pavilion will generate $14 million in economic activity in downtown, provide paid performance opportunities for 40 to 50 local artists, and offer free access to schools and community groups that want to make use of the pavilion once it's built. St. James Park deserves to be a place where San Jose gathers, celebrates, and feels safe. This ordinance update clears the path for that future. I respectfully ask you to recommend the proposed language so that this long-awaited project can finally move forward. I want to thank you for your time today and for your work for our city.
Thank you. Next is Sean Atkinson.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. I'm Sean Atkinson, Executive Director of the St. Clair Historic Preservation Foundation. And for the record, that was $400,000, not $650,000. And that was damages placed at the Court of Appeal given to the attorney who acted as the Attorney General in finding that the city violated the law. We contend the complex amended ordinance will remove longtime city protections to historic properties. That reduction creates a fair argument that the revised ordinance will result in indirect significant impacts, and so must undergo an EIR process to comply with CEQA. An addendum is intended only for minor technical changes to a certified EIR. The proposed amended ordinance eliminates protections to properties listed on the national and state level, contrary to CEQA. The idea that the ordinance will simply mimic CEQA is not supportable. If the CEQA process is sufficient, the historic ordinance would not be needed. Further, CEQA requires consideration of feasible mitigation measures and alternatives, while the proposed new historic ordinance does not. As Justice Williams wrote in the March 2024 Court of Appeal ruling against the City of San Jose, and I quote, "It's true that our reading means that historic ordinance offers more protection to historical resources than CEQA affords, but there is nothing absurd about that. Municipalities can exercise that authority and may choose to grant themselves the power to afford more protection to historical resources when not inconsistent with the state and federal law. Indeed, this ordinance would provide little more than redundancy and superfluidity if it is operated in complete parallel to CEQA and afforded nothing over and above CEQA protections. I therefore ask you to vote no on the amendments and CEQA addendum to the San Jose Historic Preservation Ordinance. Thank you very much.
Sally Schrader.
Hello, my name is Sally Schroeder, and I've been a resident of San Jose for over 23 years, and I'm currently on the board of Friends of Levitt Pavilion San Jose. And I just wanted to let you know that I frequent St. James Park a little bit, but when we started putting on concerts there for the last 4 years, being in the park, sharing the lawn with our other San Jose residents, you really get to appreciate the historical preservation of all the buildings surrounding St. James Park. And for us to bring that to all residents of San Jose, and I survey our audience, and we have over 80% of our attendees are from San Jose, and the others are mostly from our surrounding communities, Campbell and Santa Clara. So really, the Park of St. James is for the residents of San Jose to appreciate, and to appreciate the historical nature. So I really want to encourage you to recommend the HP ordinance changes as recommended. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Alexandra Urbanowski, and then we will have Phil Maresca, Ben Leach, and Randy Zeckman.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your time tonight and for all your service to the city. I'm Alexandra Urbanowski. I'm the CEO of SV Creates. We serve as the Arts Council for Santa Clara County, and I'm speaking in support of the staff recommendation related to the ordinance amendments, which will allow appropriate city council oversight and discretion related to historic preservation and community best uses and interests and benefits. SV Creates funds and supports arts groups and artists in San Jose and beyond, including many of the local arts groups that we hope will have the opportunity to use the Levitt Pavilion once it's up. We're strongly in support of moving forward with the ordinance changes so that we can build and open the Levitt Pavilion in San Jose. The Levitt Pavilion will provide more access to music for more local residents. It will provide opportunities for work to local artists, and it will preserve and activate our public park through arts and entertainment. I'm also a resident of downtown. I live within a couple of blocks of the park, and I've been to the concerts that Levitt has done over the past summer, and really just felt that joy in being in that park as a downtown resident. This is a game-changing project whose completion is long overdue. I encourage the Commission to move quickly forward with the amendments required to advance the project. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and staff. Thanks for the time. I'm here to urge you to accept the staff recommended changes to the language of the Historic Preservation Ordinance. My name is Phil Maresca, and I'm the current board chair for the local nonprofit Friends of Levitt Pavilion San Jose. I also live and work in the St. James neighborhood, and my company has worked on scores of events and activations in St. James Park over the years. I first came to San Jose 40 years ago to open a business on St. James Park. Throughout the decades since, I've seen numerous master plans, big ideas, lots of language, trying to make this park into something for everyone to enjoy. But plans rarely took hold, and this historic park continued to deteriorate in community activity and in reputation. Tonight, I'm here with my other friends and neighbors because the city has invested millions of dollars into a beautiful new plan, A plan that not only respects the heritage and history of the park, but creates something new that will bring the vibrancy and activations needed to transform this long neglected amenity. We need your help to make that happen. You're here tonight to approve corrected language that a higher court requested in order for this beautiful new plan to move forward and to bring to my neighborhood the safe, vibrant park that it deserves. This small change in language should not be feared or rejected based on stories of the terrible things that could happen. That's too short-sighted for the vision that we've already invested in this park, a clear vision of the proven joy we bring to the community. The nonprofit Friends of Levitt Pavilion are the future operators of this free music venue and future stewards of the Grand Park. We can commit to being good neighbors to all our neighbors, including those that scream in our face and those that struggle to accept change, even when change is executed intentionally and respectfully to benefit the entire community. My history with St. James Park says that if we don't make the right changes this time to the language and otherwise, we may never ever get this chance to change the park. Thank you very much.
Ben Leach.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners, Chair. Ben Leach, Executive Director of the Preservation Action Council. I really appreciate the summary from Ms. Edwards and Mr. Zazueta. This is a very complicated issue that I don't envy you're trying to wrap your head around in the context of this sounding like it's really about pro-pavilion or anti-pavilion. PACUS J, for the record, was not opposed to the pavilion. We are not a party in that lawsuit, but we are very concerned about the unintended consequences of an overly broad amendment to the ordinance that the Historic Landmarks Commission spent two sessions over 2 months highlighting their concerns and recommendations to tighten up the language that still allowed the city to proceed to address the court case that they were identifying. We really do believe that the language as proposed addresses far more than the court case suggested. That there is language in the court case that acknowledged that the city, has the ability to write any kind of ordinance they want. We acknowledge that. We just think that the Historic Preservation Ordinance is an inherent good for the city and should be strong enough to allow for the preservation of the buildings that City Council has so designated are worthy of preservation. By creating a second override that's in addition to the hardship ordinance, which has worked, that applies to both public and private projects, we're just concerned that it opens up uncertainty and unpredictability about people's expectations of what a better thing that could be in the place of a landmark. There are reasonable benefits of matching an override with CEQA, but I really want to emphasize that CEQA is a different process, and this is an ordinance that is intended to protect city landmarks, not the entirety of historic resources that CEQA addresses.
Thank you. Next we will have Randy Zechman, and followed by Norman Klein, Dan Orloff, and Michael Brio.
Thanks, Commission. This is I'm Randy Zechman, and I've been a resident of this city for more than 25 years. I'm a business owner, employ about 100 people in here in this town with multiple different companies over the years. And about 25 years ago, I actually helped found an organization called the Downtown Retail Advocates. That's main mission was to have a vision for the growth of downtown San Jose. And over the years, we've struggled to really grow it to do all the things that all these people you hear talk about doing. While I'm not an attorney and don't understand all of the legal parts that are needed here, what I would say is this city's been given a gift, and we shouldn't be looking a gift horse in the mouth over some small language that is there to really help the community and help all the people and help what all of us really want, a park that's been generally underutilized, and really we have an opportunity to do something even grander. So I hope you will approve the new language that will help support that vision.
Thank you. Norman Klein.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commission. My name is Norman Klein. I'm actually a former chair of this commission. I have been a supporter of this project for, well, the beginning. I didn't want to come out tonight, but I got an email a couple of days ago from a source that said, come out and fight City Hall. This is a power grab. And I went, this doesn't seem like a power grab to me. This seems like more of a grassroots movement. Clearly, it needs City Hall support, but it's not a power grab at all. You already have that power to do what you're doing. And this is going to happen. It's going to happen because of a wide, broad base of community support. It will not happen unless there's a huge community support behind it, and there is. Second, it's a little bit humorous to me that the opposition is a historically powerful special interest group, that did not fight City Hall, didn't barely control City Hall. Some would say it was City Hall in those smoke-filled dark rooms upstairs in the second and third floor. I hope those days are gone. We would also not be here if they had sued. If they just simply let it go, we wouldn't be here changing the ordinance that we have to do. I grew up around that park, shining shoes, selling newspapers. I'm saddened all those years that the steward of the park, the city, did such a poor job. Think of it, moving historic fountain away from the center, putting basically a freeway down the middle, and then on top of that, putting a railroad through it too. So if this is a historic building, many people would say it's not historic anymore. It is, of course. Is the ordinance perfect? No. I would suggest some changes. HLC has some good recommendations. I would recommend public be put into it. That makes sense. This is for the public good, and the public resources makes sense to me. But I could support this the way it is if necessary, because the overriding benefit is so great. Again, think of the Golden State Park without the Tea Garden, the New York Central Park without the ice skating ring, the Louvre without.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dan Orloff.
Good evening. I'm Dan Orloff, a San Jose resident. For more than 40 years, I've been promoting live music in downtown San Jose, whether it be Music in the Park, San Jose Jazz Festival, Fountain Blues and Brews Festival, San Jose Symphony, and countless clubs in downtown and throughout our city. I know what it takes to activate public spaces with music and culture. I strongly urge to move staff's recommendation, that you move staff's recommendation forward tonight. These ordinance updates will modernize our preservation framework and allow transformational projects like Levitt Pavilion San Jose to finally move forward after more than a decade of planning, review, and overwhelming community support. Levitt Pavilion represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine St. James Park as the vibrant city heart, or the vibrant heart of our city, a place where music, culture, and community thrive together. It's designed with deep respect for the park's historic character and will serve as an excellent steward of this treasured space. As founder of San Jose Rocks, a nonprofit celebrating our region's musical legacy from the world's first radio station in 1909 to being home to Los Tigres del Norte, Stevie Nicks, Creedence Clearwater, the Doobie Brothers, the Grateful Dead, Smash Mouth, the list goes on and on, I know that San Jose has been a city where music and innovation meet to bring music to the masses. What better way to honor that legacy than by activating our most historic park to ensure today's and tomorrow's rock stars have a stage. By recommending these changes, you help unlock the full potential of St. James Park and ensure that San Jose keeps rocking for generations to come. Who knows, we might just incubate the next Stevie Nicks. Thank you.
Next we have Michael Brio, followed by Mike Soderin.
Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Hi, my name is Michael Brio. I'm an urban planner, musician, and a longtime San Jose resident. I'm here tonight as a board member of the Friends of Levitt Pavilion San Jose, and I'm here to urge you to approve staff recommended changes to the Historic Preservation Ordinance as it relates to public projects. The recommended changes are a needed step for the development of the Levitt Pavilion in San Jose and St. James Park. St. James Park is one of San Jose's oldest historic treasures. However, it is often unused, underutilized, and neglected. One of the challenges of St. James Park is that there is no reason for many people to go there. It needs a use that will bring people to appreciate this treasure. The Levitt Pavilion is such a use and will act as a catalyst to revitalize this park. By attracting people up to 50 free concerts a year to the pavilion, it will help build community connections and pride in San Jose and in its downtown. The pavilion will also support the economic vitality of downtown by bringing in an estimated $14 million in spending annually, contributing to thriving restaurants and small businesses. Furthermore, the pavilion will contribute to a healthy live music ecosystem, giving local musicians an opportunity to showcase their music in a city that currently has limited opportunities to perform. Thank you in advance for your support for the proposed changes to the Historic Preservation Ordinance for public projects, such that projects like the Levitt Pavilion can move forward. Thank you.
Mike Sodergren, President of the Preservation Action Council. I'd like to start by saying that we've spoken with all the parties involved. It's heartbreaking that we're in this situation where we're fighting amongst ourselves. I think of the image of the east wing of the White House being torn down and thinking that there was nobody that could stand in the way of that. And I don't think ordinance ever stands in the way of bad decisions, because it didn't in that case. But that's where we are. We're looking at changing something that was established 50 years ago to make sure that the structures that the city has recognized as historically significant, have some protection, have some guardrails. We love our city. We love activation. As Ben Leach said earlier, we're not opposed to the activation that has been proposed via the Levitt Pavilion. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about making a legal remedy to enable a single project to go forward. I would encourage you to look at Sam Liccardo's memo, specifically for one word that is highlighted, which is public serving projects. I would strongly encourage you to look at this with a distinction between a public project and a private project. We believe that the current hardship exemption remains the most appropriate mechanism for weighing the impacts of privately initiated projects. And you shouldn't get swept into that. The Icon Echo project, the Realty Building project, the State Meets project, the Gateway Towers project were all approved by a statement of overriding consideration using that mechanism. So please distinguish between public and private projects as you look at this. If you are not clear, as the HLC was not clear, and there are experts in the city, please defer this decision and make sure you're clear.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to give public comment on this item? Please come down, state your name, and
hello, my name is Carmen Gaines. I'm a lifelong resident here in San Jose. I have several affiliations, including the Arts Commission, which recently passed a motion this Tuesday to write a letter in support of the Levitt Pavilion project. I have the privilege of living close to here, so I was able to tune in online before arriving in person to provide public comment, and I learned a lot in this session so far. I do also support PAC-SJ's push for specificity regarding the public project nature of this ordinance and the change, because I do also have those same concerns of what could happen after, but I also want to be clear in my support of the Levitt Pavilion project. Thank you.
could you please state your name for the record again?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Agrama Justiniano, and I live
I would say 2 blocks away from St. James Park, and I pass by every day on my way to work. And so I think the idea of having music in the park is exciting, and I do want to echo the importance of being specific about if this is public serving. I think that another important thing that maybe hasn't been so much discussed in terms of revitalizing St. James and or the downtown community is really making sure that we're serving everyone who's currently there, including our unhoused population. So making sure that we are inclusive of resources that can actually support them as well too is really important, because we can't just have in something new and force out people who are already there, especially the people who are struggling the most. You know, we can't just criminalize and put up zones and prohibit people from being there when there are people, where are people supposed to go? And so I think that it'd be really important for the inclusion of the intentionality inclusion of them in terms of being able to have the space that works for everyone. Because yes, I love music and it seems like an exciting thing that can happen and bring a lot of energy to the area, but I also am very considerate about the people who are suffering the most, the people who are currently on the streets in the park, right across the street from the park, the people who are in need. And so I think that when we have projects like this, it's really important to have them in mind and think about who we might be displacing in the area when we're going to do these revitalization projects. Thank you.
Your comments very much appreciated. I actually saw a presentation on the pavilion, and when the presenter was asked what would happen with the homeless people, the presenter answered, "Well, I hope that they get up and dance with us." And I found that personally refreshing in today's environment. Is there any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we will turn it over to the commissioners. I did want to mention that I did have ex parte communication with the representative of Friends of Levitt Pavilion, so just for the record.
I did as well, specifically with Susan St. John Crane. In the context of that conversation was just be hearing whatever she had to talk about.
Right. Commissioner Oliverio.
Thank you, Chair. City Attorney, I'd like to give you a scenario, and if you'd be so kind as to try, of course this is just coming off no preparation here, but William McKinley, a president, not always popular by some, and some communities want to remove their McKinley statue, and that statue exists in St. James Park, San Jose. If that were to come forward, would that trigger CEQA? If someone wanted to remove it, would the city council have to get CEQA study or something like that?
So this is a speculative question that I haven't
Well, it's a
heard
very
before,
realistic question. And
yes.
And so the ordinance now versus the modifications, would it treat that decision differently?
Sorry, so if you could rephrase, so would it treat what situation? The removal, the removal
right.
of the statute?
Let's say,
how would it be different compared to today's statute versus
what's proposed? If you want to think about it and come back and answer it, that's fine. I just wanted to ask.
So we're talking about a historic preservation permit to remove the statute, and they would. It depends on, I guess. It's a public project. I guess it would be from the city, right? Because we own.
Yeah, the city
property,
would be the applicant.
So we would be the ones removing it. And your question is whether or not we could do that now. Would it be a detriment to? So would there be a finding of detriment because of the removal?
So it wouldn't just be I'm assuming, based on what I've heard, it wouldn't just be a council action to remove the President McKinley statue from St. James Park. It would trigger an EIR or a CEQA.
Sure,
study.
there would be an environmental analysis of the removal, demolition, whatever needed to take place.
Okay.
But separate and apart from that's CEQA, which is totally different than what the HP permit would require, right? So the HP permit It would be up to the decision maker to decide whether or not that is a detriment to the historic resource.
So,
or the historic district, sorry.
Yeah, so you're saying like the workflow, the decision process, the hurdles to removing a historic statue from the park would be treated no differently today than this proposed wording?
Well, so what this is doing is adding specific language that if the decision maker wished, they could use that language as an override, for example. And it may not be any different than the findings they would make now under, let's say that they made a finding, the decision maker makes a finding for the HP permit that says this is not a detriment, even though CEQA says that it is a detriment, right? So same kind of scenario. With this added override language, the decision maker could utilize that language if they so wished to say, here are additional benefits, right? Or let's weigh these other factors, which is social, technical, legal, et cetera. All of those can come into play now, but we've been asked to have a specific override provision inserted into, or that discretion inserted into our HP permit. So I believe we could do it now with the same findings, but I don't know if that's quite answering what you're
No, I
getting
think
at.
you're getting there. I mean, this just, you know, because people have been talking about it, and I thought, well, prior to this, I didn't sort of realize that the city would actually, it couldn't just succumb to public opinion to remove the statue. It would have to take a step of, since we are in a historical overlay area, or whatever the correct term is, and then you've got a statue that's been there for, you know, decades. Can't remember when the installation was. There would be a level of study or something that would have to be done. So that's, I guess, you know, I'm not a fan of removing statuary, by the way, but I understand that this topic, even though it's not St. James, this is citywide, has certainly been about a potential project. And then I came to think about the statue, and I just was trying to sum up, would this ordinance treat that historic element, statue in the park, differently? Would it create a different process? And again, if you want to think about it,
well, no, it's just it's laying out a different tool to use, right? So and the tool that I already believe is there, sure, baked in. Court of Appeal disagreed, so that's what we're doing, is we're just spelling it out, saying, okay, here it is,
right,
in black and white. So that's what this is.
So it might simplify the removal of that statue, the new wording.
No, because the findings would still have to be researched and serious. They're not just willy-nilly, let's just do an override and that's all we have to do. No, there's still findings involved. It's still a serious analysis. It's not just checking a box. Okay, it's an override, bomb, done. No, that's not true.
So then, staying on that, because again, this isn't a project, it's a ordinance citywide. Sure. It sounds like then the proposed ordinance would make the removal of that statue easier.
It could, depending on, I mean, let's take statue out of it. Could it make any issuance of a detrimental impact to, let's say there's any application for a historic preservation permit and there's a detriment, right? City Council, Planning Commission, Director finds a detriment. They can choose which way they want to go, right? They can say, okay, we're going to do an override or we're not going to do the override. So they can say it's not a detriment, or they can say it is a detriment and we're going to do the override. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. But I didn't prepare you for this question. It just kind of came up. It's something very specific.
Think of some other examples.
Yeah, just because people have talked about it, and it's something. Anyway, it's been brought up, and it can
be done
happen in
currently
other
with this
cities,
ordinance,
and I'm just curious how this ordinance would reflect on that, because at the outset, it's not about. Maybe some of the speakers came tonight about specific projects. This is citywide, so.
Yeah, I don't think it would be. I don't necessarily think it would be easier. It just clarifies the process a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Okay, I come to this with two minds. This is difficult stuff, and I think that's why we're here. So we have to come to some sort of decision. I have to tell you, though, I always want to know why. Why does the Gentlemen's Club across the street from the park want to block this? I guess we can't ask at this point. If you actually, yeah, what you are, he's the attorney for the Gentlemen's Club. Is it appropriate to ask him a question?
Yes, you can ask.
I don't believe he's the attorney. I think he represents the St. Clair Foundation.
Okay, that's good enough for me. I assume they're the folks who have been fighting this.
So your question again?
So why is there a fight over this specific use of the park? Or any use of the park?
Right.
I don't know if
That's a
you
good
fight
question.
any use.
And that's a great question from you and from the commission here. If you read the EIR and you saw the unavoidable impacts, you'd see from noise to the materials they're going to use, to the fact that it's going to be built on the meandering paths, to the destruction to a lot of different things, from trees to the other issues in the park, then you'd kind of see if we didn't step up, being right 75 feet away, and just say, where's the compromise? They'll say there was public hearings. You'll say you had juries and you selected things, but you never once brought the people, the condominium next door to us, the people that are right on the park, other than the very Reverend Byrd. You didn't bring us in. You didn't say, how can we solve some of these problems? That's what the city of Pasadena did when they took over their little historic downtown and revitalized it. They met in ballrooms. They had big fights, but they worked it out together. And so we're here because of the impact to a nationally recognized historic building that we have. We're here because of the impact to that park and the fact that there's not even a back on the pavilion, if you look at the experts that did the EIR, and although the attorney will tell you, we just disagree with the findings, they were your findings. And those historic experts said that the noise would make it so that people living in that condominium can't open their window on a summer day. And they were here at the last Historic Landmarks Commission meeting, not your meeting, and they spoke of just that. The pounding, the sounds, the things like that destroy the historical ambience. We've been there since that building was built in 1891. My building's full of developers, business people, families. I do weddings. I do, baby showers. I've done 6 of them in the last year. We're not what people want to describe you. We're just a private club. And you know what? We are one of the longest employers in San Jose. We've been employing people since 1888. And all we've ever said, if you read all of our briefs and you read our petitions, we just want to compromise. There's people with Levitt Pavilion that will tell you, hey, we're just going to do events for about 2,500 people, and we're going to build 11 stalls, right? That's 227 people per bathroom. Levi Stadium has 65 per person. 65. So for every bath, anyways, for every 65 people, they have a stall, right? So what does that tell you they're going to do? I've been to MacArthur Park. I've been to some of these parks. I traveled with the exploratory committee with this city. MacArthur Park smells like urine. You know why? There was 2 urinals. That's it. So what we're concerned about is where we're going.
Okay. Okay. So has there not been an opportunity for you to have conversations with the organization trying to locate the pavilion there in order to seek more restrooms or whatever those concerns are?
I don't think the conversation needs to be with the vendor. I think the conversation needs to be with the city. And we've asked the attorney, we've asked our council that we need to sit down and talk. But to talk with the Friends of Levitt, it's been one-sided. We're not going to go there because they're signing. You heard them speak tonight. We weren't supposed to speak about the Levitt Pavilion. We were supposed to speak about that ordinance that protects all these historic assets. And now you're going to diminish it. just to get around us. Okay. And I'm telling you, that what that court also said was to be ready for a challenge if you don't do it legally, right? That's what Bromberg said. So if you read that ruling by the Court of Appeal, which I think sometimes was diminished by the attorney, it was a strong ruling.
You know,
and there's a lot of things
I just
in there.
I did have that specific question, but I
right.
do want to, I'm curious because you said some of your members are developers.
Yes.
And I'm sure with the club's been around how many years?
Well, since 1888.
Okay, so very long time.
Very long time.
So some of your members probably demolished more significant things along the way.
Well, I think if you call it neglect and demolish, I think that's what they're doing in the park, right? So I don't know if you want me to compare apples to apples or just say.
No, I just want to know.
I have, honestly, like I couldn't answer that.
It's very prescriptive.
I'm right next door to a church that hasn't been demolished, that sits there blighted, right?
Next question.
Yeah.
The members of your club are generally fairly well off, I would assume.
I would say it's a fair assessment to pay dues and to join a private club.
35,000 membership?
Excuse me?
Is it 35,000 membership initiation?
No,
and then membership
I
fees?
can't comment about
Okay.
what it's confidential.
It doesn't matter, because
All right.
I think if your foundation was really concerned about that park, your tenancy there for so long, it seems like you've had ample opportunity to do more.
We've done a lot. We've done a lot with our community.
It looks pretty, so
I know.
One of your members actually, oddly, which was a real strange coincidence to me, was Mr. Hart, who used to run department stores, whose son was murdered.
Right.
And the two men who murdered his son were lynched in that very same park.
That's right.
I would think he would have raised the park by now. But at any rate.
They took the tree down anyway, so I understand.
Yeah,
I understand where you're going.
It's interesting to me. So I'm not sure.
Our members would like to come up with a compromise to build a park that everybody can use and the people around it can be happy, and that there's not 300 shows a year, and because you'll hear about the 50, but they want 300 shows a year and up to 5,000 people. When John Cicerelli and the city department said it can only accommodate 3,000, but yet they signed an agreement with Levitt Pavilion that they're going to have shows for 5,000. So there's flaws in the plan, but when you're that close to the development, you don't see your own flaws, right?
Okay.
So.
Okay. I really appreciate.
Thank you.
Because it does give me more perspective.
Right.
I really appreciate your time
Thank
and
you,
your willingness to come and speak to me about that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right. My other concern is I hear cultural concerns, but I'm concerned about what culture we protect. This park has had a dubious past for Chinese and Japanese Americans. What culture are we protecting? I don't understand the argument, but I am concerned on my other mind about a slippery slope. Given this kind of room for decisions to be made in rooms that most of us are not in, concerns me. I think I'd like to know what's the next likely project that this would impact. Do we have any idea? That scares me. I'm sorry. Were you gonna speak?
I'll answer.
Go ahead.
So it shouldn't scare you. I'll tell you that. But I guess I want to press on, that's why you're here. That's why the community's here. That's why we have the HLC. It's why we have a historic preservation officer. It's why we have, to inform our decision makers of the right decision. The discretion's there, right? It's there. And are we talking about taking it away? Or are we talking about informing people to make the right decisions, right? So that's what it is. It's about trust in our decision makers. If they make a mistake, you vote them out. By limiting their discretion, which they have,
But are we taking that away to say, oh, we don't trust you because you're going to overreach and
Well,
you're going to do bad things? So, I mean, I'm just saying.
I know,
it's
but that's
up
not a
to
good
us.
argument for me.
So I don't know what the next project might be, but it's up to all of us to instruct the decision makers on the correct approach.
Well, I can tell you, sometimes they do more harm than they can recognize. Specifically, I'll give you an example of the requirement to shelter and the impact it has on the black community, which is already marginalized and most likely to be in prison here, 5 times more likely to be arrested. So they make decisions that can harm entire communities.
Agreed.
So I'm not sure I want to just leave that decision in their hands, because it's often too late once the decision is made. So that's my concern, and I'll render my vote at the end of all of this, but I do want to say I'm concerned. I think we should put some guardrails up, because we don't, unless you know, I'm sorry, you were going to speak a minute ago about the next likely project. Unless we understand the downstream impact more clearly, it's hard to just say yes. While at the same time, we need to be careful about the desire for nostalgia that we live within in this city that has caused the significant impacts through redlining and other processes that exclude entire segments of our community. So we don't want to just say, well, since you're across the street from the park, you own it, you make the decision, because culturally it's more important to you than anyone else. That's not. We live here together. At the same time, we should not be giving carte blanche. We have to be careful, because we don't know what the next likely project is. We should be very careful, because decisions are made by bodies elected, and they're not always good. That's it. Thank you.
We'll move to Commissioner Young, followed by Commissioners Brosio and Bickford.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I have a question for staff. So the folks that are concerned about maybe the overly broadness of this, they talk about public versus private. I think one of the speakers suggested just maybe limiting it to public projects. Can you just talk a little bit about what discussions staff had around that issue?
We basically are processing the recommendations of the Historic Landmarks Commission and the Planning Commission. Staff has not had a lot of discussion about this. I don't know, Daniel, whether you want to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think so inserting public into this language is a policy decision, not something, I'm totally neutral to it. It's not part of this. I think we could do that. However, it's up to staff to decide whether or not, which approach are we going to take? Which recommendation are they going to put forward? Are they going to say, okay, well, this is a public project, so we think there's a bigger benefit to the public. There's an easier way to say this isn't a detriment, because it's weighing more on the side of being a public benefit. Whereas if it's a private, we may steer them towards hardship. Say, we don't believe this deserves an override. We're not going to support an override, but we will support a hardship finding. But it's up to staff really to guide that conversation. But again, it's a policy decision. It would be something that you could recommend to insert public, but it's also, I don't know if we want to, foreclose. I don't know, I can't think of a scenario where there would be a private situation where we would want this override. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It's just that I think we're treating them both equally and leaving it up to the professionals to decide how to recommend a course of action given the particulars of the project, be it public or private.
Great, thank you. That was That was a very good explanation. When I read the staff report on this, I found it extremely confusing. And one of the first things I was trying to figure out is who is the St. Clair Historic Preservation Foundation? I mean, that to me sounds like a foundation, like a large group of people. That's not what it is. I'll quote from the San Jose Inside, December 4th, 2020, the foundation is an alter ego of the St. Clair Club, a men's-only establishment and the most elite private club in San Jose. So let's just be honest about who they are. And I appreciate Commissioner Cantrell asking the question of why. Why were they opposed? I have a theory. I think they're opposed because they have a really expensive private club and they didn't want a bunch of people in the park playing music, right? That makes the most sense to me. And they have a lot of money and power, so they could force the city to spend $600,000 trying to build a pavilion in a park that would make it better, right? I don't get it. Well, I do get it. I understand why they did it. I think to me, what it comes down to is we have a potentially beautiful park. I like to spend time in St. James Park, but we use the word activate. I like that word because what it means is to make a place more lively, right? And what's the best thing to make a place more lively? More people, right? I think one of the challenges of St. James Park right now is there's just not a lot of people down there, at least during the day when I'm there. So anything we can do to bring more people to the park is a good thing, because if people come to a concert, they'll say, wow, this is kind of nice. Tomorrow I'm going to bring my kids down and run around, whatever. I guess where I'm at on this is that I do not have a concern that this language will create an overly broad situation. We have such a process for looking at historic preservation. We have an ordinance, we have a commission, much like our commission, we have a historic preservation commission, we have staff, we have the planning commission, and ultimately the city council. That's a lot of steps, and I think it's a lot of transparency. I'm certainly in support of this recommendation. I think we need to get that pavilion built. I'm really looking forward to going to a concert down there. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation.
And I'll second. A second from Commissioner Cow.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Commissioner Barroso.
Perfect, thank you. Question for staff. If this moves forward, when would this show up at City Council for their vote?
The record of the commission and the Historic Landmarks Commission will be presented on December 2nd.
Okay, so a couple Tuesdays from now. Okay. So I think for everyone here, that would be the next stop, right? Because we're advisory, right? So we're going to weigh in and advise City Council, but the ultimate decision makers will be making that decision on December 2nd. And then the other one, I'm very unfamiliar with the St. Clair group, but we can find a lot of opinions about groups. So I just, me personally, I would like to learn more about every group, but it hit me where we read an article or a piece of an article about a person who came, or a group, And it's a slippery slope for us to pick the article, pick the word, pick the language that we put back out there. I think that discourages people engaging with us. If it's true or not true, I don't know. But I think we have to be careful in what we put out there, especially when we don't have an exchange where they, folks cannot clarify a certain editorial or certain article and how true or not true that is. So I'm sorry that I saw that today, but again, back to the business at hand. So December 2nd would be the next stop. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Commissioner Bickford, followed by Commissioner Young.
I want to just address something Commissioner Young said earlier, and wonderful to ask the question about public versus private and why we might or might not want that separation. I just want to go on very clear record as saying I'm opposed to that separation. I think that the city needs to give equal treatment to properties, whether they are privately held or publicly held. And as the steward of a private club that's almost as old as the St. Clair, not in downtown San Jose, I would want the ability to bring this with this wording and not have a different standard applied to me as a private club versus a public entity. So just a statement, and I'm supportive. I'd like to call for the question. Oh, sorry. Do we have somebody else wants to speak? I retract that. Sorry. I'm not doing that.
That's fine. Commissioner Young. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just have a question for the audience. How many members here are members of the St. Clair Historical Foundation? Could you raise your hand? Okay, my point exactly. So, Commissioner Barocio, in relation to your comments, normally a foundation has like many people in it. We haven't had anyone here testify that lives in the area of St. James Park that they're against the pavilion. None. And I would think normally when we have projects like this, a lot of people come out that live in the neighborhood. We have, excuse me, it's not your turn to speak. So we have one person that's really telling, right? So I just want to point that out. Thanks.
Now can I call for the question?
We'll go to Commissioner Barocio first.
Right. For me, it's not the composition, at least on this one. It was the reading of the article and reading the alter ego something or other. And I mean, who's the author? Who's the editor? What's the news source? What's the evidence? I mean, it may or may not be there. I don't know. But I think just to say it out there at the commission level, I think we can debate on the ordinance change, on the language, and not really bring in that kind of, those kind of statements. I think isolated, it kind of sways people. And again, it doesn't allow us to engage and to look further into that, where I don't think we need to discredit or label to get our arguments across. I just heard it and it didn't land well to my ears. And in terms of the work they do, how they represent the area and the community, that to me wasn't the impact that I felt was impactful. Thank you.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Commissioner Young, did you have a question? No. Okay. Oh, okay. Just didn't want to be rude. Okay. Actually, I welcome hearing the thoughts of my fellow commissioners here. I want to be clear that I'm not sure what you're referencing because I didn't see that message, whatever that was about. No, I thought you read an article or something. Oh, okay.
It was a quote read from the San Jose Insider that depicted the St. Clair group in a certain way.
Oh, okay.
And it's tough to have deep, thoughtful conversations when a curveball is thrown, when,
okay.
Yeah.
So. Okay, I respect and appreciate your thoughts there. I thought maybe I'd missed something. Okay. But I did want to say, I am listening to what my fellow commissioners are saying here, and I really respect and appreciate it, because I would really like to see, I really would like to see this project move forward. I completely love the idea of the project and the spirit of the project and the change for the use of the park for the entire community and not just an asset to one organization who can dictate what happens there because they have the means to do it. I say, if you can dictate what happens there because you have the means to do it, do something for the entire community, support this organization, and let's get on with it. That's what I say. However, I do think, once again, we have to be careful. We have to be very deliberate. So I'll listen. I always listen to what you have to say, and I respect and appreciate it. To move this project forward, I think I would do a lot of things. I'm not sure I can do that. That's all. But I'm interested in what you have to say, Commissioner Bendel.
Commissioner Bendel.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you to everybody who's came out tonight. I know it's a long meeting. Your guys' item was third on the list, and a few of the ones before you guys took some time. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your input. St. James Park is a park that reminds you of San Jose. There's so many other parks. San Francisco has many different parks, and all of them kind of remind you of San Jose, but the one that really reminds you of a lot of them really remind you of San Francisco, but the one that really reminds you of San Jose is St. James Park. I think that park's been kind of neglected. It's hard to go to that park. You guys all, I'm assuming, live close to that park, so you guys have an easy access and an easy way of going there. But for someone who doesn't live close to that park, that lives on a different side of the city, San Jose is not small, it's pretty big. It's kind of tough to go there. Why would you go there? Even though it's our park, right? It's San Jose's park. We're part of San Jose too, but if you live far away, you're not really taking the commute to go there, or walk your dog there, or whatnot. And you want to see San Jose thrive. And you want to see San Jose win, right? Regardless of which location in San Jose, but you really wanted to see it win. And I think this project brings life back to the park. It brings music. It brings something new, something that we're kind of in need for. And the park's been neglected. And like Commissioner Young was saying, it's thriving when people attend, and people need a reason to attend. So I support the project. But before I give up the mic, I did want to give a special shout out to our city attorney. He's been working hard tonight. He did a lot of reading in the beginning. He read about 5 pages, which felt like 15. And he's done a phenomenal job answering questions. And thank you so much to the city attorney. And now I'll give up the mic. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I just have a few comments, and then I suppose we can move on to a vote if there's no other words from the commissioners. I think that the pavilion is something that's needed by downtown so badly, in a downtown where we've always tried to improve it, and will give folks another place in San Jose to go and enjoy, and will come on some top 10 list of things to do in San Jose, I'm sure. But we're here about the ordinance today. First, I respectfully disagree with Justice Williams and Justice Manukian, who I used to work for. I think the city has the power to do this, but that aside, the complaints that we hear all the time with its planning department are about the time it takes to get projects through the city and how much that costs. And that is one of the main drivers that things are not built in the city, in downtown, or, like I said, around the city. I think we have many checks and balances. We are well within our rights to amend this ordinance, and the courts have said so. And I think we already see abuses of CEQA that prevent development around the state. And from what I surmise, this change would remove avenues for additional unwanted litigation that would take more time when we already have a robust system of checks and balances between the commission, the department, the historic landmarks, the city council. And I think without seeing development like this, we're going to continue to lose events to San Francisco, and I think it could potentially be a detriment to the city. So I would be in favor of the staff's recommendation. Were a motion made? Young Cow? All right. If there's nothing else, we will go to a roll call vote.
Was there a motion?
Yeah, Young made the motion.
Second is?
Cow.
Yep.
Vice Chair Bickford.
And the motion is to accept the...
Yes. The motion is to recommend the city council adopt the resolution and approve the ordinance.
Yes.
Commissioner Borosio.
Yes.
Commissioner Bondal.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, with a message to people who will use this change to be judicious and deliberate and careful.
Commissioner Cow.
Yes.
Commissioner Casey is absent. Commissioner Nguyen.
Yes.
Commissioner Oliverio.
Yes. Save the McKinley statue.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Myself is a yes, and the motion carries 9-0. All right, and thank you to all the members of the public who came out tonight. I know it's late on a Wednesday. All right. Moving on to agenda item 5D, PP 25-001.
Chair?
Yes.
Can we take a 2-minute stretch break, maybe? I don't know if that is allowed.
Yes, we can take a 2-minute stretch.
Thank you.
Recess.
It's a new group.
Go. Let's start moving forward.
Oh, we got incentives here.
Yeah.
And end the recess.
Well, we got 20 minutes.
We start deducting from your stipend.
We have quorum.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6.
All right, moving on to the last item of the night. Agenda item 5D, PP 25-001, amending Title 19 and Title 20. Do we have a staff presentation?
Good evening, Chair. Yes, we do. Yes. Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Rina Horia, and I am the project manager for today's presentation on file number PP 25-001, zoning code update. I'm joined here by my colleague, Brent Carvalho. He is the co-project manager. Also here with us today is Supervising Planner Aparna Ankola and Division Manager and Principal Planner Martina Davis. We are here to share the proposed code update for Title 19 subdivisions and various sections of Title 20, the zoning code. So today's presentation will cover a number of topics that have been brought together through a series of multiple outreach efforts. Majority of these items being discussed today are because the city must comply with housing element actions, state law updates, and city council direction. The yellow box represents updates for infill housing. These are based on new state law, housing element action items, city council direction, or the California Department of Housing and Community Development, commonly referred to as HCD. The blue represents various updates to the code to comply with state bills, direction from HCD, and alignment with existing processes. The last category in green is a cleanup of the zoning codes chapter on density bonus, ministerial approvals, and to add a new chapter in Title 19's subdivisions. All of these items will be further explained in today's presentation. I'll go ahead and begin with a quick refresher on Senate Bill 9. This bill was signed into law and has been in effect since January of 2022. The goal of this bill is to encourage infill housing by allowing ministerial approval of an urban lot split and 2-unit developments for a maximum of 4 units for the undivided lot. Sites that are eligible under SB 9 are those that are in the city's R1 single-family zoning district and must meet additional eligibility requirements as stated in the bill, such as 4-foot side and rear setbacks. As of July of this year, SB 450, signed into law, complements SB 9. SB 450 prohibits local agencies from creating standards for ministerially approved infill housing that would constrain development. In other words, the city cannot impose standards like height and setbacks that don't already apply to the city's R1 single-family zoning. When SB 9 was first passed, the city initially created standards that fit the eligibility requirements of the bill at the time, but did not include any modifications to the standards that were not strictly required to conform to state law. At the time that council adopted that ordinance, they directed us to go further. The approval included direction for staff to 1, develop citywide design standards for the implementation of SB 9, 2, to explore allowances for SB 9 type housing projects within R2 zoning districts and historic resources otherwise not eligible under SB 9, and 3, to develop standards for properties within the city's 12 historic districts. Part of the council direction was to ensure that SB 9 implementation for R2 parcels with structures built before 1950 could proceed once a clear discretionary historic review process would be in place. This recent revisit of the SB 9 standards allowed us to learn lessons from about 3 years of implementation to draft updated standards to facilitate construction of SB 9 units. It also included ample outreach to both residents and designers, which was not part of the initial SB 9 update. In addition, the city's Housing Element Action Item P7 directs staff to update the zoning standards to facilitate development as well. As of June 2024, the city has engaged with various stakeholders across a series of focus groups with designers, historic preservation stakeholders, and a neighborhood group, and 3 community meetings. During this outreach, our stakeholders provided input that would guide the creation, modification, and refinement of design standards that would allow for infill housing. Key takeaways from those meetings were understanding how the city's existing zoning code for SB 9 implementation constrains buildability, such as access and unit configurations. And from residents, we heard concerns over privacy, parking, open space, infrastructure, and much more. For the next few slides, we'll go through the standards staff have identified to address Council Direction 1. When an applicant has an eligible SB 9 site and is interested in what we call an urban lot split, or basically subdividing their lots into 2 new lots, the way the invisible line is drawn can create what we call a flag lot. This allows for a unit towards the front of the street and another towards the rear of the property. In order to access the rear property, there must be an access way. The existing standard for an access corridor is 12 to 15 feet wide, but during our update, we heard from designers and saw that majority of single-family homes in San Jose are built with 5-foot side setbacks. The existing 12 to 15 feet driveway standard would require part of the existing home to be demolished in order to access the rear unit. This would be a major feasibility constraint for homeowners. Staff also spoke with the city's fire department to learn about what access width would be adequate during an emergency at these sites. As shown on the diagram to the left, very narrow, substandard streets requires a larger access corridor to ensure fire emergency personnel can adequately access the rear lot if a car is parked on the access corridor. As shown on the diagram to the right, when the street meets current standards, fire trucks can maneuver as needed, and a pedestrian access way of 4 to 7 feet is adequate enough for fire emergency personnel to access the entire lot. It also discourages cars to be parked, which otherwise would cause an obstruction to their path. For the dwelling unit standards, staff proposes to increase the second-story height. We propose to increase the height within the rear setback by matching what we already allow for ADUs. For dwelling unit configurations, in R1 one-family zoning districts, you can have 1 primary dwelling unit, 1 detached ADU, and 1 junior ADU, and 1 conversion ADU, like a garage conversion, for a total of 4 units. In R2 two-family zoning districts, you can provide 2 units that are attached to each other, which we would traditionally call a duplex, 2 detached ADUs, and 1 conversion, which comes to a total of 5 units, which is the current state ADU law allowance. In R2, another possible configuration is for the 2 primary units to be detached from each other, which we would consider single family, which allows the single family ADU allowance of 1 detached ADU, 1 junior ADU, and 1 conversion ADU. We also heard that the garage frontage requirement was also a constraint on buildability. Therefore, we propose to remove this requirement. The city currently allows a floor area ratio of up to 45% for single-family homes. The FAR is a measurement of floor area of a dwelling divided by the entire lot area. The development community expressed to us that the existing maximum FAR of 45% limits viability of SB 9 units. At the same time, input from residents highlighted concerns regarding privacy, open space, and ground permeability. To address both concerns, staff proposes to increase the maximum FAR for SB9 and SB9 type projects with using a combination of FAR and lot coverage. Generally, lot coverage is the area of all buildings and roofed structures on a lot divided by the total lot area. The city's lot coverage will exclude existing or proposed ADUs and junior ADUs. Staff analyzed that an increased FAR of 65% on a typical single lot without the lot coverage standard would allow new units to be constructed right up to the 4-foot setbacks as allowed by SB 9. This would leave essentially no yard space for these developments. Now we'll move on to City Council's direction to analyze the potential to expand SB 9 type housing project opportunities in R2 and historic districts in R1 and R2. Staff has found that the city's R2 district is comparable to the city's R1 single-family zoning district in lot size, building typology, and neighborhood context. Therefore, the proposed design standards identified in R1 are extended to sites in R2. This process streamlines approval for projects in R2 that are achieved through clearly defined objective design standards. Staff also found that there are over 2,500 parcels that are either in R1 or R2 zoning districts that have a historic resource status. City Council directed staff to ensure that for properties within the 12 historic districts in San Jose, the standards explicitly disallow demolition of any contributing building or individually significant structure, and if a single structure in a historic district is split into 2 or more units, require the applicant to follow the city's Your Old House historic design standards to ensure both the exterior and interior changes will minimally impact the existing exterior structure. So for things like windows, doors, additions, and massing. Staff has identified the process required for different types of historic resources. A historic resource in an R1 or R2 zoning district, other than a designated city landmark, will require a single-family house permit process. If designated as a city landmark, it will require a historic preservation permit. The proposed objective design standards are listed on this slide. After staff finalized these standards, the state signed a new bill, AB 1061, which extends SB 9 to historic properties within single-family zoning districts. We are currently analyzing this new bill, and based on our analysis so far, we believe we are mostly compliant, but will require additional updates for compliance with state law, and staff will bring forth these changes and additional state law conformance items by summer 2026. As mentioned before, this ordinance update ensures that this ordinance includes a discretionary process for structures built before 1950 in R2 zoning districts. When staff conducted the analysis, we found that there are a little over 500 structures that exist that are eligible for SB 9 type infill housing development. As directed by City Council, we are proposing a requirement for applicants to submit a historic report to identify whether their structure is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, State Register, or as a candidate city landmark. If they are, then they would follow the historic standards in new Part 9.5. If they're not deemed eligible, they would follow the typical standards under Part 9 for city streamlined implementation for 2-unit developments on a single lot within 2 family zoning districts. Moving forward to another type of infill housing, SB 684, effective as of July 1st, 2024, is a state law that streamlines housing for projects on a lot zoned for multifamily residential. No larger than 5 acres, new subdivided parcels must be at least 600 square feet, and the site must be substantially surrounded by qualified urban uses. SB 1123, effective as of July 1st, 2025, is a bill that amends SB 684 and requires, in addition, streamlined housing on vacant single-family lots of less than 1.5 acres with a minimum parcel size of 1,200 square feet. If a site is within a housing element, the density must match 66% of what is required by the housing element, which comes out to 19.8 dwelling units per acre. If the site is outside of the housing element, the number of units required to be built must be at least 66% of the base zoning or 19.8 dwelling units per acre, whichever density is greater. Each unit has to have an average size of 1,750 net habitable square feet. Staff is proposing to allow attached ADUs to be included with a project eligible under SB 684 and 1123. Because this is a ministerial process, the proposed code is included in Title 20, Chapter 20.190 for ministerial approvals. The city does not have a lot of discretion with this bill, so the proposed zoning amendments simply address the minimum requirements of the bill and includes the allowance for attached ADUs. Staff would also like to point out that we have included an amendment to the ordinance on page 3 and 76 as a response to comments from Airport Land Use Commission related to the comprehensive land use plan. And as about an hour, maybe 2 hours ago, they deemed it consistent. State Senate Bill 1211, effective as of January of this year, requires local agencies to allow up to 8 detached accessory dwelling units in R2 two-family or multifamily zoning districts. The prior allowance under state law was 2 detached ADUs. This code update ensures conformance with state ADU law. The following items in this table are updates to code references based on state law or direction from HCD. SB 1418 streamlines the installation of hydrogen fuel cell stations in commercial and industrial zoning districts, as well as properties that were previously a gas station. Assembly Bill 2632 requires cities to allow secondhand stores to be treated like any other retailer. The proposed update removes the requirement for a use permit for secondhand stores downtown and includes a prohibition of outdoor drop-off of goods. Regarding group homes, currently in the city, other than in R1 and R2 zoning districts, we require a use permit for 7 or more residents. The state said we have to allow it in all residential and no longer require a use permit for 7 or more. HCD directed staff to update the zoning code to allow unlicensed group homes of any number of residents by right, where other types of housing is allowed. The city has allowed unlicensed group homes with up to 7 residents by right and has either disallowed or required a use permit for group homes of more than 7 residents, depending on the zoning district. This ordinance update removes the cap of 7 residents as required and adds a new definition of group homes to better align with HCD required language. As part of the cleanup and maintenance of the code, we are adding text to align with Title 13 to allow the consumption of off-sale alcohol within designated entertainment zone boundaries. We're also cleaning up and clarifying mixed-use neighborhood standards. We're also adding a code text to allow heat pumps within the setback area and to modify the distance of tankless water heaters, heat pumps, and power inverters to maintain a minimum 3-foot side setback. These heat pumps will still need to conform to the city's noise standards. Staff are proposing amendments to streamline the code written in the density bonus and ministerial chapters, as well as adding a new chapter in Title 19. The proposed amendments do not introduce any changes to the existing provisions, except that it ensures the city is in conformance with current state laws. The streamlined text will reduce the need to amend the zoning ordinance every time the state law provisions change. With Title 19, we are adding text to explain the ministerial tentative map process, but please note this is a process that we have been implementing, it just hasn't been written down in the code. And we are proposing to take this with your recommendation to City Council. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you so much for your time, and we're now available to take your questions.
All right, we'll move to public comment. We'll go with Glenn Garfunkel and then Alex Siwak? Siwak.
Good evening. Thank you for your service, commissioners. My name is Glenn Garfunkel. I'm on the San Jose Climate Advisory Commission. I support the proposed setback ordinance update, which facilitates heat pump installations in side yards of commercial, residential, and zoning districts. The current ordinance provides side yard setback exemptions for tankless water heaters, batteries, and some other structures, but omits heat pumps. The proposed update here adds heat pumps to the list and maintains the 3-foot side yard setback standard. The change can benefit heat pump installation affordability, operating costs, heating efficiency, and aesthetics, and should also help reduce off-permit installations. The 3-foot side yard setback rule has been adopted by other Bay Area cities and has been supported by the Climate Advisory Commission, by SPUR, the Bay Area Urban Planning Association, RHA Associates, and some other groups. Achieving the full benefits is contingent on noise-related details in the separate permit application process, which is in discussion. We support the proposed ordinance and look forward to nailing down the application process details. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alex Siwak. I tried to send you a little email, and unfortunately your published email addresses got kicked back. There's some sort of technical problem about it. We're developing a project in San Jose, and we wanted to include attached ADUs as allowed by state law in those units. And we also wanted to be able to sell or make available the ADUs as separate parcels to be either kept by within the family that purchases the primary unit, including the ADU, as well as at some point they may want to rent the ADU or dispose of it in a separate transaction. It just happened that these amendments and additions to the ordinances about the ADUs came along. We had a bunch of questions. I have to compliment Ms. Encola. It was a godsend that she actually initiated calls to us, set up conference calls in the last couple of days. We had questions about how all of this was going to work. She's clarified everything, and we look forward to getting input from Public Works as to how these, the term condoized parcel maps will work for this type of project. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other members of the public that would like to speak on this? All right. Turning to the commissioners. Commissioner Oliverio.
Thank you, Chair. If you could go back to the PowerPoint starting at the end and go to the slide under density bonus. And then I'll take you to the front. So question here, eliminating the state law references, isn't that informative to the public on why the density bonus is there because of state law?
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. Martina Davis, Division Manager. So we are not removing all references to state law, but yeah, we are removing many of the very specific references to state law and the references to the individual statutes. Yeah, that's been a big debate as we thought through doing this, because the ordinance is informative, but regardless of what the ordinance says, those state laws do apply. What we had to weigh was the informative value with the fact that we're back here every year amending this ordinance every single time the state updates stuff. And so it's become a real problem for us, right, for our workload. So weighing that, we did decide to recommend kind of removing a lot of those more specific references to the state law, and what we will do is for that public value of, why are you doing this? What statute are you referencing? That's where we're really gonna rely on our application forms and our materials that we publish on our website and elsewhere, so that track back to state law still exists, and so people can still understand, you know, that statute we're referencing and whatnot. But it would make it so we don't have to come back, you know, year after year and updating the code every single time the state law changes, which is unfortunately quite frequently in the last few years.
So fair enough to surmise, you believe that a layperson reading this will ultimately, after these modifications have been made, will understand that the city is compelled to do so because of state law?
Yes,
Okay.
we believe we wrote it that way.
Great.
And then again, honestly, I don't know that a layperson's going to read the ordinance regardless. So that's why we very much are trying to create some, some real good communication materials. But I hear you for sure.
Great. So then if you went forward or backwards on the presentation till you got to group homes. So so we're basically eliminating the SUP process, is that correct? Well, and that basically allowed for the community to understand what was coming in next door to them and potentially get some rules set up because the city had to approve it. I think there was a law a decade prior that said you must accommodate. So ultimately removing the public process from these group homes, is that correct?
Correct.
And is the state mandating that, or are we choosing to?
The state is mandating this.
Okay.
And it's not just us. They are mandating this from what we can tell. Just about every city that has a housing element is mandated to do this.
Fair enough. Moving on. SB 684. It's up a couple slides. Is this it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could you help me picture what this would look like? You know, I love it when there's you put a map on there and this and that. Like, are we talking here, would you say it's a 2-acre parcel and it's getting X number of units on it?
So 684 would allow up to 10 parcels and up to 10 units.
And what's the minimum size of that lot?
So the minimum size, you can, if it is a single family, it can go up to 1,200 square feet. But if it's a multi-family, it's going to be 600 square feet.
Do you know where I can see something like that in the city of San Jose?
It essentially describes townhomes.
It's
That's kind of what it's anticipating is townhomes, small apartment buildings. So you could do condominiums. So you could do like a 10-unit apartment building potentially. But if you kind of boil down like 600 square foot lot, the unit sizes, it's really kind of anticipating townhomes or small lot, single family cottages. People don't tend to build that anymore.
Sure.
So we think the market would really push this more to the townhome model.
And again, state law on this one too? Okay, good times. We'll never have a planning commission meeting again. Then going to SB 9, where we're talking about the driveway and the garage, is that essentially eliminating on-site parking from the parcel?
Yes, it is. So for the record, we do not have a minimum parking requirement in the city. So while we currently require kind of the size of a driveway to access that rear spot, so effectively it creates, the potential for a parking space. They never had to use that for parking. They could have landscaped it. But yes, effectively it did create essentially a driveway, I would say, in probably most cases. So this would allow units without a parking spot practically.
Okay, and required state law? Or discretion?
So this one is somewhat discretionary. It is a housing element action item to revamp our SB 9 standards to make them more functional and more usable for development. And this was actually probably the #1 thing that has come up. It's actually called out in the housing element as one of the things we should look at. So yeah, I mean, I would say if we could make the case that our ordinance otherwise kind of broadly facilitated these units without doing that, would probably be okay, but I'm not so sure what HCD would say, and frankly, again, this was actually probably the #1 that came up as a constraint to subdivisions.
And HCD does not care about parking, correct?
Correct.
They're concerned about units.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else from the other commissioners? Would anybody like to make a motion?
A motion that we approve.
Cantrell?
Second.
Bandal. Okay. Move to a roll call vote. If there's no discussion?
Wait, I have something to say.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for all your hard work. I know SB9 is something that's challenging. It's kind of hard to navigate, and we're experiencing that as well. So thank you for all your hard work on this, and looking forward to the vote.
Anyone else? All right, Vice Chair Bickford.
Yes.
Commissioner Barocio.
Yes.
Commissioner Bandal.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, and thank you for your very thorough, comprehensive work.
Commissioner Cow.
Yes.
Commissioner Casey is absent. Commissioner Nguyen.
Yes.
Commissioner Oliverio.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
And myself, yes. The motion carries 9-0 to 1 to recommend City Council take the actions suggested by staff. Sorry, I'm tired.
And the state of California.
And those guys in Sacramento. People in Sacramento. All right. We have good and welfare. What's going on?
I just have a question about 2026 calendar. This is about the time where we usually get one, and I haven't seen one yet. Next week.
You had email.
Yeah, hold on. That's the next
All
question.
right.
What about email? Is it just, we're gonna use our personal emails forever? Is that what's gonna happen?
Let me jump in on that because I have had discussions with both the clerk and the IT director, and the hope is that you will have your emails back soon. My hope was this week. If not this week, next week, is the assurance I received.
Hallelujah. Thank you. My personal email thanks you.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any referrals from City Council, boards, commissions, or other?
It's just about the emails. Maybe this is the opportunity to align the number in the email to our district. I don't have any ongoing conversation, so if I get 5, because I'm District 5, so people that want to email me know that I'm 5 and 7 and so on, I think this is the time.
Yeah, well, let us look at that. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We'll take a look and see what we can do.
Yeah, you're okay.
Any referrals?
No referrals.
Good and welfare. Report from City Council.
Just 2 projects have been to City Council since we saw you last. There were the 2 PD zonings, PD permit, and T-maps. The 2 separate projects for 8 single-family units, both on Roberts Avenue. Both were approved by Council on the consent calendar.
Okay. Subcommittees, outstanding business, calendar, study sessions.
None of the above.
Anything else for the public record?
One question regarding our general plan obligations. We discussed the SB 79 maps, which seemed like it's going to take a long time. Is it possible for staff to at least publish the transit stations that SB 79 will affect?
Yeah, so we do have an initial map that just shows the boundary around those stations we believe are applicable. There's a little bit more work that needs to go into that. Our intent had been to publish an information memorandum in January for the City Council. It actually looks like we may be going with an item to City Council in January, so we'll be able to provide the task force an update on that as we reconvene.
A question for the planning director. It's because we missed you all day. We haven't heard from you. Yeah. So, the cost of development study, I know it's happening for sort of City Council in December. Is it open to everybody? Anybody can attend? And also, will we be having a separate one, or can you just kind of tell us about that?
So I don't think we had the intent of doing a separate one for the Planning Commission, but it's definitely something we can look at. It is scheduled for December 8th, the morning of the December 8th with the City Council. And certainly I think you can attend that as a Planning Commissioner just to listen in. It will be online, so you can also watch it from home or work, depending on how you feel about that.
And we're really hoping we can get our emails back too.
Sorry?
We can get our emails back.
Yes, yeah. Working on it.
Yeah, because it's kind of challenging. Yeah. So.
No, we agree. We think that's an important thing to.
And then what Commissioner Bosio said to aligning the numbers would be.
Okay, I'm going to work on that one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? With that, the meeting is adjourned at 10:06.